Tocho sampo pa gyu trashi pa tuche tempe trinle yarmoda pelge drolor zampedze pande lame shabla solvade Om Guru Vajradhara Suma Timo Nisha Sanekar Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Suma Timo Nisha Sanekar Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Suma Timo Nisha Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Pakyuke kudan dagi lu, pakyuke sundan dagi nga, pakyuke tukdan dagi yi, ten yerme çıktı çingi lu, makyuke kudan dagi lu. Makyuke sundan dagi nga, makyuke tukdan dagi yi, ten yerme çıktı çingi lo. Om Muni Muni Maha Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Muni Hamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Muni Hamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Buongiorno.
Good morning.
Cominceremo oggi,
We
come
will start now, as all the other times of these teachings, with some recitation that has been made since many generations. But when you start these teachings, the first thing that is done is the recitation of what is called the Heart Sutra. The more correct term would be the Sutra of the Essence of Perfection, of Wisdom, and is dedicated in this moment especially to eliminating interferences. So we imagine everything, all that can be an interference, to comprehend properly the teachings, which is not a conceptual thing, but the fact that we can really assimilate them and bring them to the depths of our being. So we imagine that these interferences are completely eliminated. And at the end of this recitation of the Heart Sutra, there will be a moment where we clap the hands 3 times. In that moment, we imagine that all the interferences have been completely eliminated. And then there is a prayer which is a bit long, where we ask the blessings, and he said the name of each one of the masters of the lineage through which these teachings got to us. So we will do that, and then we will begin with the effective part of the teachings. And then there is the offering of the mandala. That is the moment where we make a request, because Buddha Shakyamuni never went to anyone to say, look, you need to understand this. All of his teachings have always started out of a request, out of a demand. And this brought this tradition in Buddhism that the teachings should never be given if not requested. And once requested, if one has the knowledge and capacity, should be given. So one of the commitments that one takes is that one shouldn't teach something to someone if that is not requested. And on the other hand, once it's requested, usually like 3 times, then he has or she has no choice other than transmitting the teachings if there are the conditions. So we will do this formality of the request of the teachings, and then we will start. So we now follow with the first part, with the Heart Sutra.
Papa kunjo sumla cha tse alo dike dake tepa tuchi na chumdende gyalpo kap chago pumbo rila gelongi gendun chimbo dan janchu sembe gendun chimbo dan taba chikdu shuote te tse chumdende samu nawa she jawe chege namdrange tinge zila nyumbra shu so yang te tse janju semba semba chimbo pakpa chere zi wangju sheragi parutu chimba sam chepa nila nambra tashin pumbo ngabo deda lai rang shingi tombra nambra tao Tene sangye gi tu tsedan denpa shari pu chanchu semba semba chim papa chere si wangjo la dike che me so rigi pu kangla la sheragi paru tu chimba samo chepa chopra deba te chitra labra cha dike che me padam Janchu semba semba chembo papa chere zi wangju gi tsedandem shara tati pula dike che me so shari pu rigi pu wan rigi pu mo kangla la sheragi paru tu chimba samo chepa chopra deba te ditra nambra tawra chate pumbo ngabu teta kyam rang shinge tombara nambra yandabra jesu tao Su tomba o tomba ni su 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 le tomba ni shema yin tomba ni le kyang suk shema yin no tishin tu tsorwa dan du she dan nambra sheba nama tomba o sharipu Tedra che tamche tomba ni te tsini meba ma keba ma gakpa trima meba trima dan trawa triwa meba Kangwa meba wo sharipu teta we na tomba nila su me tsorwa me dushe na me nambra sheba me mik me nawa me na me che me lu me yi su me dra me tri me ro me rekcha me che me to migi kam me ba ne Yige kamme, yige nambra shebe, kamge pardo yame to, marikpa seba meba, gashi me, gashi sebe, pardo yame to, teshin tu, dunge wadang, kunchu wadang, gokpa dama lame, yeshe me, topa me matopa yame to sharipu tetawe na chanchu semba nama topa me bechir sheragi parutu chimbala tenchi nete semla tripa meche trapa mete chinchi lole shindu den nyange ledebe tar chiento tu sundu nambra shube sangye tamche kyang sheragi parutu chimbala tene lana mepa yandabra zobe jan Umbara zoba sangye so tetawe na sheragi parutu chimbe nga rikpa chimbe nga lana mebe nga minyam pada nyambe nga dunge tamche raptu shivra chebe nga mizumbe na dembra shebra chate sheragi parutu chimbe nga mepa tayata gate gate par Samgate bodhi swaha sharipu chanchu semba semba chim Deda sheragi parutu chimba samola labra chawo tene chumdende tinge zin teleshen Chanchu semba semba chimbo papa cherezi wanjola lekso she jawa chingne lekso lekso rigipu tete shino rigipu tete shinte Chitra kyogi temba shindu sheragi parutu chimba samola chepracha Deshin sheba namkyan chesu irango chumden degi dige che katsene tsedan demba shara twati put Chanchu semba semba chimbo papa chenrezi wanjo dan tam chendan dem Kora teda dan lada midan lamai Trisara chebe jikden irante Chumden degi sumbala ngombara do Kala chebe neche dambana Ngweshe zudru ngawe tutobchen Druba pola maye pushinsi Nesung kandro tsola chatse lo Akasamaranza shatarasa maraya pe Akasamaranza shatarasa maraya pe Akasamaranza shatarasa maraya pe Akasamaranza shatarasa maraya pe Akasamaranza shatarasa Akasamaranza shatarasa maraya pe Maraya pe Akasamaranza shatarasa maraya pe Tayata gate gate para samgate bodhi svoha Pagpa kuncho sumge kai dembe topchi do pargyurchi me pargyurchi she pargyurchi rabdu shivara gyurchi drage parche mitimbe choreng embatamche shandi kuru yesoha Geri tongra geju shiwada midun nembe kendan trawa tumba drupchin punsun tsugurpe trashi tekyan tendir dele shun. Chiediamo le benedizioni di tutti i
We ask the blessings to all the masters of the lineage.
Panden tsawe Lama Rinpoche dagi chivra pede tenshola kadrin chimbo gone jesonte kuson togi ngodru tsedu so kuson togi ngodru tsedu so drenpa nyangme tenpa chumdende gyasa tamba chitsumi pangom gyawe longten pakpa tome sha sangye jansen sumla sowade sangye jansen sumla solwade Zamlin kebe tsugen yiginye ume lamnye pakpa namdrode tebe rangne tsumba namdrode jikne mikche sumla sowade jikte mikche Mechu ngotsara ne gyuro choge de samu lamge gyojan dulwe de lapchen chepe tergyo namnanze drowe tsala sumla solwade Drove tsala sumla solwade lamcho shirchin geze sensan sha gyawe menga kunzin kusali drogun tsewe jinzin gewa chen drove tepun sumla solwade drove tepun sumla solwade Chancho Tola Nganye Serlimpa Shinda Chimbo Seze Marmeze Lamsa Seze Temba Rinpoche Tembe Sonze Sumla Sowade Tembe Sokshin Sumla Sowade Mawadame Dremjo Shaketo Gyawe Kenra Kundu Jambe Yang Samu Tense Pakcho Ludrusha Mawe Tsugen Sumla Solwade Sowade Pakpe Gomba Seze Dawadra Tese Tuwo Rikpe Kuchu Che Gyase Rikpe Kuchu Nibe Sha Rikpe Wanchuk Sumla Sowade Rikpe Wancho Sumla Sowade Jikten Tamu Chishin Sikpa Yin Chimbo Sense Marmeze Lamsa Seze Tumba Rinpoche Zamling Gingyur Nila Solwade Zamling Gingyur Nila Solwade Nelchoro Wancho Panden Gomba Wa Samo Tenzin Tembe Siurampa Dube Denu Kunze Tamapa Tako Drume Sumla Sowade Tako Drume Sumla Sowade Tsumbe Drubar Hulen Namse Sha Dambe Chila Namka Gyaboda Chikten Chöge Pambe Senge Sang Gyase Sambe Shabla Solwade Sowade Chancho Togi Drogun Pushin Siel Hakpe Lai Jason Chinge Lab Nikto Drowa Drembe Shenyen Cho Namka Gensen Shabla Solwade Namka Gensen Shabla Sowade Gyawe Dutsa Shenyen Potawa Namcho Drenda Drawe Sharawa Chancho Togi Kabab Chekawa Drove Rekon Sumla Solwade Drove Rekon Sumla Sowade Lungdo Ngada Chancho Chibupa Trime Lungde Wangjo Kebe Cho Kamson Drove Gombo Rinpoche Neden Chimbo Sumla Solwade Neden Chimbo Sumla Sowade Namda Tsulting Eda Sanchempa Dulwa Bumde Ngada Tsunapa Chonge Gyatso Tarsum Mundrapa Drove Drimba Sumla Solwade Drove Drimba Sumla Sowade Sabchin Gyache Chula Nganye Pe Kalden Drova Kungi Kyapsu Gyur Chinle Samu Temba Gyeze Pa Panden Lame Shabla Solwade Panden Lame Shabla Solwade Drube Wanchu Chimbo Tsultrimbar Shenyen Tsushin Tenze Shunu Tekcho Lamge Gyuchan Gekorasha Gyawe Sebo Sumla Solwade Gyawe Sebo Sumla Solwade Mijun Yunden Zinzen Sangewe Tambe Chinla Namga Gyabodan Jikten Chöge Pambe Senge San Sese Sambo Shabla Solwade Gyase Sambo Shabla Solwade Chancho Tugi Drogun Pushin Se Alhakpe Lai Jeson Chinge Lab Nikto Drove Drembe Shenyen Cho Namge Gyanzen Shabla Solwade Namge Gyanzen Shabla Sowade Mime Tsewe Terche Cherezi Drime Kembe Wambo Jambe Liang Kanche Kebe Tsugen Tsongapa Losan Rabe Shabla Solwade Shabla Sowade Drube Wanjo Jambe Gyatso Dang Kedru Mawe Nima Gelepe Ningyo Dabe Zunzin Paseje Dame Lama Sumla Solwade Dame Lama Sumla Sowade Sonjo Kunye Chege Dorje Dang Kusung Ungyur Gyawa En Sapa Lungdo Ngada Sangye Yeshe Sa Kedru Chimbo Sumla Sowade Kedru Chimbo Sumla Sowade Losan Chege Gansen Zimbeje Te Tukse Kunjo Gansen Sha Lamsa Seze Losan Yeshe Te Chetsun Lama Sumla Solwade Chetsun Lama Sumla Sowade Tupten Petse Ngawa Chambadan Te Tukse Losan Nyendra Sha Gyatso Tabo Yunden Taye Nga Chinchen Lama Sumla Solwade Chinchen Lama Sumla Sowade Losan Yeshe Tenrage Lodro Sambo Drogun Namdreze Losan Gyawet Tsungme Lama Sumla Solwade Tsungme Lama Sumla Solwade Kelsan Namdre Shembe Longto Ten Shedro Nige Zila Datrewa Kadrin Nyangme Tsawe Lama La Gosung Guba Chimbo Solwade Kosung Guba Chimbo Sowade Mangde Damba Sharwe Kingoroge Rimni Chebe Rigda Sonyense Kelsan Duce Numsa Kundenye Tembe Kedru Shabla Solwade Tenzin Kedru Shabla Sowade, Tuson Kemne Malu Dubeku, Losan Jambe Shedru Drugeson, Lapson Gudre Lundru Gatso, Tinchen Trube Kula Sowade, Tinchen Trube Kula Sowade, Jamba Tsulden Lasso Panorgi, Tugyo Lektam Galden Zimbetso, Namshi Tinle Gatso Kuchenkun, Yonga Jetsun Lamara Solwade, Yongkyab Jetsun Lamara Sowade, Losan Galwa Kunge Yesheni, Chikdu Time Gaden Zimbetso, Ramjan Kilgore Gatso Trudugun, Tinchen Lame Shabla Solwade, Tinchen Lame Shabla Sowade, Locho Sambo Pagyu Trashipa, Tuche Tembe Tinle Yarngoda, Peje Drolo Zambe Zebrache, Pande Lame Shabla Solwade, Pande Lame Shabla. Ramjan Snorab Kunla Tawe Mi Kelsan Tarbara Drebe Jungocho Sewe Kyobe Tapke Zebaye Seze Shenye Namla Solwade Seze Shenye Namla Solwade Palden Lama Namdar Tarpala Keche Tsamya Lokta Mikeshim Chitze Lekpara Tongwe Mugugi Lame Chinle Semla Jukparacho Lame Chinlaba Semla Jukparasho. Chiediamo le benedizioni per
We ask
realizzare
the blessings to realize each one of the steps of the gradual path to enlightenment.
Shingyu Trinjenje, Tsushin Temba Lamge Tsawaro, Lekpara Tongne Beba Tumayi, Kuba Chimba Tembra Chingelo, Kuba Chimba Tembra Chingelo, Lenje Nyebe Dewe Tensandi, Shindu Nyeka Tunjen Shigyurne, Ninsen Kundu Nimbo Lembelo, Gyunche Meba Kevra Chingelo, Gyunche Meba Kevra Chingelo, Loso Yowa Chui Chuburshin, Nyurtu Jikpe Chiwa Trembada, Shiwe Jesu Ludan Timashin, Karna Ledre Chishin Trawala, Ngepa Tembo Nyene Nyebetso, Trashin Trawa, Namkyang Powa Dang, Getso Tada Drubra Chebala, Takto Pagdan Dembra Jingelo, Takto Pagdan Dembra Jingelo, Chebe Mingo Dunga Kungego, Yide Miron Sibe Punsogi, Nimiringne Tarbara Dewala, Tunyere Chembo Kevra Jingelo, Tunyere Chembur Kevra Jingel, Namda Samba Teye Tramba Ye, Trendan Sheshin Paye Chembo Ye, Tembe Tsawa Sosora Tarbala, Druba Nimbo Chebra Jingelo, Druba Nimbro Chebra Jingelo, Rangi Sitso Longwara Chishinto, Magyur Drowa, Gungyan Tedrawar, Tongne Drowa, Drolwe Kurkerwe, Jancho Semcho Jongwara Jingelo, Jancho Semcho Jongwara Jingelo, Semsan Kekya Tsutri Namsola, Gomba Mena Jancho Midrupar, Lekpara Tongne Gyase Dombala, Tsomba Trakpo Lobra Jingelo, Tsomba Trakpo Lobra Jingelo, Lokpe Yula Yangwa Shije Chin, Yangda Tola Tsushin Chebayi, Shine Lakto Sunto Drewe Lama Nyurdo Gyula Kevra Jingelo, Nyurdo Gyula Kevra Jingelo, Tumo Lamja Nudu Gyurbana, Tekpa Kunge Chugyo Dorjete, Kesan Kewo Jungwa Tambate, Dela Nitu Jukbra Jingelo, Dela Nitu Jukbra Jingelo, Tetse Ngodru Namnye Drubeshin, Namda Datse Domba Songwala, Choma Mimbe Ngeba Nyegyurne, Sodan Dede Songwara Jingelo, Sodan Dede Song. Tene Gyude Nimbo Rimnigi Nenam Jishin Tone Tsumbai, Tunshin Elchura Chule Mie Wara Dambe Songshin Drubra Jingelo, Tambe Songshin Drubra Jingelo, Tedra Lamsam Tembe Shenyenda, Sultrin Shua Tushin Drube Drona Shabdenshin, Chida Nange Pardu Chebetso, Nyawara Shivara Jinge Labdoso, Nyawara Shivara Jinge Labdoso, Kewa Kundo Yanda Lama, Drame Cheki Pela Longche Chin, Sadan Lamge Yenten Rabzone, Dorje Change Kopa Nyurtobsho, Dorje Change Kopa Nyurtobsho. Offerta del mandala come
Mandala offering as a request for the teachings.
Sa shi pe ki cho shi me to chama re ra ba shi ni de gen pa. Lo stato prima. Ange shinto mikte ulwarki drokunam dashin la chopar Lame Kotserapte Chinam Kar Tingle Chochur Gepadam Lo Santempe Dren Me Sasum Ki Drowem Setaktu Ne Gyurche Dam Guru Ratna Mendrala Kam Niryatayami Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dage Chushe Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam La Jancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dagi Chushe Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsogi Chonam La Jancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dagi Chushe Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Druparesho. Nel Buddha,
In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Namo Alhaye Ke Dan Ludan Jin Ke Trubunda Mi Ke Namdan Rowa Kunge Tranam Chitsampa Tamche Ke To Dagi Cheten To Tamche Ke To Dagi Cheten To. Buongiorno.
Good morning.
Ok. Sono contento che siamo oggi qui.
I'm happy that we are here today One of the main reasons is that each one of us is quite busy with his own life, with his own story and reality. I'm convinced that if we go and check what are the problems that each one of us has, the beautiful things that happens, that one has to live and so on, in the daily life we have so many things. And very often we are somehow dragged away by mostly what is on the surface. It's like our senses work, where the priority is given to which is more gross, more on the surface. And so, for example, if we are hearing some sounds in our hearing, if there are very, very subtle sounds and very hard, very strong sounds, when there are those strong sounds, we are not able to listen, to hear the subtle ones. The priority is given to the stronger ones. So the capacity of our hearing, the sensitivity of it decreases in order to adapt to the more gross level. And so as the grosser levels then fade away, then our hearing increases the sensitivity so that we can hear also the more subtler sounds that are there. The same thing happens with each one of our senses, included our mind. And so in general, the priority that we give and attention is the attention towards what is concerning our survival, towards what is about overcoming difficulties and the body's the pain of the body, what is about also the pleasures on a more gross level, both like on the eating or seeing or affection or whatever it is. What happens is that anyway, these are things on a very gross, rough level. And it's as if someone was whispering some very beautiful things in our ears, but we were not able to hear those whispers, those beautiful things that are told to us, not because they were not told, but because there is so much noise. And when there is a lot of noise, our hearing adapts to the noise. And if we observe in our lives, very often we have a lot of noise. And so, like for example, how much information each one of us has received in the last week that actually was not necessary, that doesn't bring anything that is particularly positive. And what happens is that when we have a lot of noise around, we have a hard time to listen and to see the more subtler aspects, the more deeper aspects, that often are the most important ones. For example, being able to listen to our own intuition. It's very difficult to listen, to feel the intuition when there is a lot of inner noise. And so where there are constant thoughts and so on.
E questi momenti che noi creiamo insieme, come oggi,
these moments that we create together, like today, like I said before, I am happy, and the reason that comes to my mind is that actually it's not a moment where I have the intention of teaching you something. It's not a lesson.
se dovessimo fare
Because if we had to go through the Lam Rim, the stages of the path to enlightenment, to explain it like a lesson, really in like a weekend we can finish everything, like maybe 3 weekends, okay, that's enough. But even better, like if I just give it to you to read, you read the books, everything is written there. But the point, what we need is not to acquire information, and that's it, but to allow ourselves in this moment to go through a sort of analytical meditation together, where we reflect together on aspects that are important. And so we get out of the level of the the gross daily life and going to subtler aspects and having them to move inside of us. And then those also manifest on the gross level in our daily, everyday life. And I believe that these moments are particularly important, whether we do them together or with others or however we want, but to create moments sometimes to be able to somehow disconnect from the rest, from all the noise that is around, and to connect with subtler, deeper aspects of ourselves. I believe that this is something very important, which unfortunately we rarely allow ourselves. Who does more, who less.
Nella volta precedente
The previous time we faced one of my favorite subjects, which is death.
siamo andati a vedere, no? La certezza.
So we checked the certainty of the death, the certainty of the uncertainty of the moment of death. And death by itself shouldn't be seen or lived like something that is bad, of which we should be afraid of. One of the main aspects that we have talked about is that death is not a defeat. There is nothing wrong in dying. The problem is not dying. The problem is living in a bad way and also dying in a bad way. And this brings us to, okay, there is a certainty. I will have to die, yes. And we also left each other with 4 questions that we ask ourselves now also. Will I have to die or not? Let's allow ourselves that the answer shouldn't come from our head but from our belly. The master of the master of Lama said that when one asks himself the question, will I have to die or not, and replies in a correct way, one has the goosebumps and the stomach closes down, because it's not something conceptual anymore. I don't know, how often have you ever an experience that is non-conceptual of the certainty of one's own mortality? A simple example, but that shows that to us. Sometimes it has happened to me as I was driving in the car, that something happens where almost there was an accident. And there is that adrenaline coming up, the moment where you feel like, ooh, it could have happened. And there are some moments when one gets in touch with that and, okay, death is real. So the first question is, will I die or not? One gives some space and time to that and breathes at least 3 times before replying, to make it so that that answer is not conceptual but that comes from like a deeper place. And so, will I have to die or not?
Mi sa proprio di sì.
I really think so.
Quindi sì.
And so, yes. When?
La nostra risposta è no.
Our answer is, I don't know. Or does someone know? Maybe
Quando le
a
cause
smart one who could say, when causes and conditions will be there. Yes, right answer. But when will it be? In the temporal.
Però anche questo non lo so.
But also this, I don't know, we should try to feel this answer on a deeper level, not like on a superficial level, because our tendency is to say, I don't know when I will die, but it's like, I don't know, that doesn't include today. It's I don't know, like from here, like to 30 years, 50 years, maybe further on, even at least 15 years. But I've seen people that really were feeling very bad physically, that until the day before dying, they faced it like, yes, I will die, but there is no hurry, there is time. There's one case in particular that comes to my mind, that unfortunately a person that had a very clear idea, for example, of what she wanted. she put a lot of effort during life to work and everything, and she put like a very clear way of how to live things after death. And there was that thing, okay, yes, I will do the testaments one day, but yes, wait, there is time.
Succede una cosa, succede un'altra.
Then one thing happens, another thing happens, and then the disease caught the arm and she was not able to write, and then one day passes and the other, and the fact is that there is time, and then she died. What was her will was not absolutely respected.
Questo è un esempio.
And this is one example. We could spend the whole morning making examples of who thinks that will live forever, and then poof, when one least expects. So there is a sane way of saying, okay, I prepare myself. When will happen? I really don't know, but I must be ready. So when will I die? I don't know. But is it I don't know? It's I don't know that can include today. Yes.
Se dovessi morire oggi,
if I had to die today, who would I be in front of my death? What would I bring with me and what would I leave to others?
qual è l'esempio che lascio agli
What is the
altri?
example that I leave to others? What are the resolved things, the unresolved things, the problems, the beautiful things,
Esempi che
the
lascio.
examples that I leave?
Cosa porto di me come
What I
stesso? Chi sono
bring
io
of
dinanzi alla
me
mia
with
propria
me?
morte?
Who am I in front of my own death?
Che
An
va al di
I
là del
that
corpo,
goes
che va al di là
beyond
del
the
nome,
body, goes
al di là
beyond the
della
name,
conoscenza
the knowledge, the conceptual knowledge, and so on.
E la quarta domanda è:
And the fourth question
se io dovessi morire
is, if I had to die today,
cosa porterei con
what
me?
would I
Quindi la
bring with
quarta
me?
domanda è: che cosa sto facendo?
And the fourth
Che
question
cosa
is,
voglio
okay,
fare
what am I doing
oggi,
today?
questi
What do I
giorni,
want to do today in
per
these days
coltivare
to
ciò che
cultivate
porterò con
what
me, per
I will
prendere
bring
cura
with
di
me
ciò
and
che
to take
porterò
care
con
of what I
me
will
e
bring with
proprio
me
lascio agli altri?
and of what I will leave to the others?
Che poi la cosa più interessante
And
è
the
che
most
se qualcuno mi
interesting
chiede:
thing
sì,
is that
Lama, però
if someone
aspetta,
asks me, yes, Lama,
se
but
io
wait a
passo
second,
tutta la
if I
vita
spend my whole life
vivendo come se dovessi
living as
morire
if I had to die tomorrow or today,
preparandomi per quello che
preparing
voglio
myself
portare con me,
for
per quello che voglio lasciare
what
agli
I want
altri,
to bring with
e poi
me and
invece
leave to the
vivo fino
others,
a
and then
120
actually I
anni,
live until
è stata
120
una
years,
fregatura, ho
then
passato
it was a
tutti
whole
questi anni lì per niente,
trick. I spent
sono
all that
preparato
years
troppo
for
presto.
nothing. I prepared myself too early.
La realtà è che no.
The reality is that no,
Perché?
because
Quando noi vediamo le
when
cose
we
che
check
possiamo
the
portare
things that
con
we
noi,
can
ciò
bring
che
with
continua
ourselves,
dopo la
what
morte,
continues after death
sono gli aspetti più
are
profondi.
the more
Sono
deeper
le nostre
aspects, are our
predisposizioni, sono le nostre
predispositions,
abitudini,
our habits,
è la
is
forza
the
dell'inerzia delle
inertia,
nostre
the
proprie
force
azioni,
that goes on
detta forza karmica.
of our actions, our karmic
Sono le abitudini
force,
più
the
profonde
deeper
che sono le
habits
impronte
that
delle
are
nostre
the imprints
emozioni,
of our
delle
emotions,
nostre
of our
azioni.
actions.
Per dire
And for
uno che
example,
medita tanto
one that
tutta la
meditates a
vita,
lot during his
quando
life,
muore,
when he dies,
porta con sé
then
la
brings with him the
predisposizione a meditare.
predisposition to meditate.
Uno che
One
mentisce
that
tanto
lies
tutta
a
la vita,
lot during his life
porta con sé la
brings with him the predisposition
mentire.
to lie.
E così possiamo andare
And
avanti su
like this, we
qualsiasi
can
cosa.
go on many things.
Perciò quello che
And
accade
so,
è,
what happens
se io
is that
vivo la
if
mia
I
quotidianità
live my
nella
daily life
prendere cura di
in,
ciò
with
che
taking care
continua
of
dopo la
what
morte, e alla
continues
fine
after
di
death,
conti prendo cura di quello di cui ho più
after
bisogno
all,
nella
I will
vita.
take care of what I need the most during my own life.
Perché nella nostra vita
Because in our lives, in
quotidiana,
our daily lives,
quello di cui più abbiamo
what we need the
bisogno
most
sono delle nostre qualità
are
interne,
our inner
di
qualities.
amore, e
So
di
love,
compasione, e
compassion,
di stabilità,
and
e di
stability, and
gratitudine, e di
gratitude,
avere dei
and of
rapporti
having
sani con
sane
gli altri,
relationships with the others,
coltivare delle buone
cultivating
abitudini.
good qualities.
Perciò
And so,
vivere nella
to
consapevolezza
live
della
with the
propria
awareness
mortalità,
of one's
se
own
viene fatto
mortality,
nel modo
if that's
corretto,
done properly,
porta se
brings
stesso a una vita
oneself
più sana.
to a more sane life.
Ok? E quindi questa è una cosa
And so,
ottima.
this is an excellent
Ed è
thing.
interessante perché
And it's
dobbiamo stare
interesting
attenti
because we have
che
to be
parlare della
careful,
morte è
okay?
un tabù.
Because talking about death is a taboo.
Lo so,
I
è una
know.
cosa che è un po'
Something that's a
non è
bit
proprio
like not
piacevole.
very pleasurable.
Però in realtà l'approccio
But
non è che
actually,
dobbiamo affrontare la morte come
the
una
attitude
cosa
is not that we should face
come
death
una
like as
realtà
a
in cui
bad
ci
thing, but
siamo,
like as a
che
reality
dobbiamo in qualche
that it's
modo
there,
rifa- aff-
that
no,
we need
affrontando la
somehow
morte ci porta in realtà
by facing death, it brings us to see and to live the preciousness of each moment of life. Because the problem is that very often we say, how precious is this life, my life here and life there. But actually, life, what is it made out of? Moments, meetings and feelings. Each and every moment. And very often we waste moments, we don't value them. Even we say, so boring, life doesn't pass. But if life is precious, then let's enjoy it. Let's live things in a meaningful way. Let's give value to life. Let's use it well. By life, I don't mean like life in general. I mean like every moment, every meeting, every word, every breath, possibly. And that's where we have to go.
Lam
Rim teachings have a very precise order with which they were taught, as we have already said previously. Some time has passed already. The Indian master Atisha went to Tibet and gave the first teachings, where he took all the teachings from Buddha and he put them inside of an order and structure that is accessible and easy, like a sort of manual to enlightenment. So if we take the various sutras of Buddha, there is everything inside there, but it's not easy to understand step by step what needs to be done. So Atisha took all these teachings, put them together, and made like a sort of manual. And then this manual was developed in the following centuries in Tibet, where various masters made their own version of the manual. So we could say that the version by excellence of this manual for enlightenment was written by Lama Tsongkhapa in the 14th century, which is this text that I have in front of me. Someone could say, wow, so big. No, letters are big. I have it here because one of my disciples in Tibet, last time that I was there, he gave it to me as a present and said, this is the text of Lam Rim. So Lam Rim Chemo, the great treatise on the gradual path of enlightenment, written by Lama Tsongkhapa, that was printed even today by hand. With there are some wooden matrices made by hand, and they're printed one by one, and also directly in the monastery of Lama Tsongkhapa. So this book was printed there, and he made me promise. He said, I beg you, I want to offer you this book, but you have to use it when you will teach Lam Rim. And I said, fine. So that's why I brought it here. But this manual that Lama Tsongkhapa transmitted to us, that comes from Atisha and that comes from the teachings of Buddha, has some very precise steps. Some of them are joyous, others are difficult. And we are in a moment of this manual, this path, that is a bit challenging. In the sense that sometimes someone comes to me, Lama, thank you, the teachings were very beautiful, and so on. And I think, well, okay, when we receive the teachings, the goal is not that they are beautiful, that we have a beautiful moment together and that is pleasant, okay, that's fine, but that's not the goal. The goal is, the purpose is that it moves something in a positive way, and not always this process is pleasant. Sometimes, also in Tibetan, there is a way of saying, from the mouth of who loves you, sweet words don't come out, a bit exaggerated. But to say that sometimes we need to feel things in our face. And here we get to a point of the Lam Rim, of the gradual path, which is a point that is a bit of a taboo for us in the West, but that's not for that we shouldn't face it.
Partiamo dal seguente.
Let's start with the following.
Viene chiamato la beatitudine della ignoranza.
There is what is called the bliss of ignorance. That is when one walks towards the a cliff, but doesn't see it, doesn't know that it's there. And so there is like a sort of pleasure in the moment where one doesn't see the pain that one is doing to himself, doesn't see what is happening, and so there is that sort of, bit sarcastically speaking, that bliss of ignorance. And then when you open your eyes and you see what is happening, and you say, oh, it's not pleasant, because you see that you're walking towards a dangerous direction, you're doing something that is not fine. And it's like, okay, as long as I eat poison without knowing that it's poison, and I like taste, wow, that's so nice and everything. But the day that I understand that it's poison, then it changes. Not necessarily I'm able to stop, because I have an addiction to that poison, I like it. I don't know, let's take one of the most recent addictions. Has it ever occurred to you, I shouldn't eat sugar and not manage to stop eating sugar, and also, okay, no, I shouldn't take the phone, but then you take it. What happens is that we are made out of habits. But what makes us change the habit is, first of all, the awareness.
Se usiamo un altro modo di
If we use another way of explaining, when we repeat something a lot, especially in our way of seeing reality, in our way of thinking, of reacting, of being, when we repeat a lot something, we create as if it was like some neuronal highways. So every time we take again that path. One day we realize that that path brings us to a wrong place. To create a new path is difficult because we are so used to take that highway, and so we have to put some effort to change direction and to get out of the highway, and it's very difficult. From a physical point of view even, it requires a lot of energy to change habits, to change neuronal paths that we used to take. Demands effort, and that's why also there are some studies that say that when we want to change a habit, the key point is the first 40 days, because the most difficult part is the first step. Okay, I don't take the highway, I take an off-road path. Comes to my mind when we were in Mongolia the last summer. At a certain point, one side I would see, okay, the highway, and I don't know why we were going off-road, and it was not like an off-road path, there was no road, so there were these Russian cars that were going like that on some paths, and we were like more cars, one was going here and the other there. It was really like a totally crazy thing. It has its own logic, because like there was so much dirt coming up, that then they will drive far away one from the other to not get the dirt on one's face. And so one sees, okay, that there is like the nice car, the nice road. Why do you go off-road? Because it brings you somewhere else. But you have to repeat that off-road path so many times, so that then after a while there becomes a road is created. So in order to create a new neuronal path, a new habit, at least around 40 days are required of repetition without taking the other one. Then it starts to become easier. But it's not obvious for us to change the path. And in front of this, when we are in front of a certain habit, there are 3 stimuli to change habit. These are the 3 stimuli in general in life. We all do what we do, stimulated by mainly 3 things. To do that thing brings a benefit, so I see something good in doing that. I see that doing that thing prevents something bad, negative, of suffering, so to avoid something negative. And for a moral thing, I have taken the commitment. I say that that I would have done it. I am Buddhist, so I have to do it. I don't know, whatever. Each one has its own, but for a moral thing. There are some very nice studies that showed how the swearing that one has to do something or not do something increases a lot the capacity of following that direction, even when he is swearing about something that he or she doesn't believe on. So there is a very interesting documentary talking about these things, and they will show these studies that they did in many countries in the world where they made people swear about something, and these people had with no religious belief whatsoever, and they had to swear on some religious text. And some other times they had to swear in a university on some sort of fundamental text of the university that didn't exist. And one didn't even know if it was true or not, but the fact of taking the commitment increased a lot the capacity of sustaining that afterwards. And so when we do whatever we do, there are three main forces that push us to do it. We do that either because it's good for us, or because it avoids something bad, or because we took the commitment. There is a moral matter.
È chiaro? Ok. E qui entra un punto
And here
fondamentale.
there is a fundamental point, that is, there is a coherence between what I do today, how I live life today, and what I will live and experience tomorrow. Present and past are connected. The present and future are connected.
Una delle difficoltà che noi abbiamo
One of the difficulties that we have is that usually we make some confusion between causes and conditions.
le cause sono simili
Causes are similar to some seeds that are planted in a fertile soil.
le condizioni sono
The
come
conditions are
l'acqua
like the
e il
water
sole.
and the sun.
Quindi quando comincia
So
a germogliare
when it starts
quella pianta cresce,
um,
è cresciuta
to
perché
sprout the plant, it happens because there was some water, but that is the
il
condition.
seme è stato piantato
The
quanto
seed
tempo
was
prima?
planted how much time before that?
Magari tanto. Una volta qualcuno mi disse: guarda che è un seme di fior di loto.
Someone could say maybe look at a seed of lotus
Ha
flower
la capacità di rimanere
as the
senza
capacity
germogliare
of
per
remaining
oltre
there without
2000
sprouting for like 2000
anni.
years.
Trovati semi di loto
They found
antichissimi di
lotus
più di 2000 anni che
flower
quando trovano la
seeds
condizione giusta,
that they are so old, and but when they have the right condition, they come up. And when I think about
usiamo
this,
il termine sbagliato, ma la
we use
tecnologia che
the
c'è in
wrong
queste
term,
cose è
but the
spaventosa,
technologies that
anche
it's in these
l'intelligenza
things,
artificiale.
it's tremendous. Other, like artificial intelligence is nothing compared.
Il seme
The
capisce
seed
il momento
understands the right moment.
giusto. È pazzesco.
It's crazy, really.
Mi ricordo una volta uno studio che parlava
I
di
remember once of a study talking about some
che
little
riescono
birds
a
that are
sapere, a
able
prevedere
to
se ci saranno gli uragani o
forecast
no.
if there will be some hurricanes or
Che
not
fanno le
that
migrazioni.
year,
Il
because
periodo
they
in cui
will
escono per
do
migrare
migrations, and the
è
period that
l'unico
they
modo che
migrate
gli scienziati oggi hanno per sapere un
is the
po'
only
se
way
ci
that
saranno o meno
scientists
degli
now
uragani.
have to know if there will be hurricanes or not that year.
Posticipato gli uragani quell'anno. E hanno fatto tutti degli
And
studi
they
fino ad oggi non sono riusciti a
went
capire
through
come questi
so many
uccelli
studies, but up to
che noi
today
vediamo
they
come
still were not able to understand how these little birds that
riescono a
we see as
capire
stupid
qualcosa che
somehow
noi con tutte
are
le
able to
nostre
understand something that we, with all
computer,
our
studi e tutto il
calculations
resto,
and
non
computers
riusciamo
and
a
studies, are not able to get to.
o per dire
Or
l'unico modo che si è
the only
trovato
way
fino ad
that
oggi,
has been
almeno da quello
found
che io
up to
so,
today, at least for what I
per
know,
avvertire
to
una persona che ha l'epilessia che sta
um,
per arrivare a un
warn a person that has epilepsy that an attack will come are
che
some
sanno,
dogs
che
that
riescono ad
know
avvertire, riescono a
and are
percepire.
able
Non
to
c'è un altro
perceive it,
modo per
to
capire.
warn the person. There is no other way to know it.
Questo per dire che
And this is to say
ci
that
sono
there
diversi
are
aspetti,
some
no? Anche nella
aspects
natura
also in
una
nature. It's like
saggezza in tanti aspetti
wisdom in
veramente
many aspects that is very,
quando noi
it's
guardiamo il
incredible.
seme,
And when we look at
il seme ha un
a seed
potenziale
has
enorme,
a huge potential in itself.
però la caratteristica
But
del
the
seme
characteristic of the
è che
seed
quando viene
is that
piantato,
when
quando
it's
cade da un
planted,
albero,
when it
quando
falls from a
entra
tree,
nella terra,
when it gets in the soil doesn't bring its results until there are the conditions. There needs to be the right temperature, there needs to be a right humidity, and so on.
Esiste un concetto
There is a concept in physics that I really like that says energy is not created and is not destroyed, but is transformed, is transferred from one thing to the other.
Si dice nella
It
tradizione
is said in the Buddhist tradition that when we make an action, physically we interact with someone, or verbally or mentally,
noi stiamo generando
we
un'inerzia,
are generating a force, we are generating an energy. That energy is transferred and remains with us as if it was a seed. It's an energy that remains there, that at a certain point gets in touch with something else, which is the condition, and that energy is transformed in another experience. That is how the seed sprouts. In other words, the present moment, and by present moment we mean our sensations,
oltre che il nostro
other than our discernment, perception, but mainly we're talking about the sensation.
è il momento in cui
Is the moment where the past ripens.
quello che accade nel momento
What happens in the present moment is just the condition, it's not the cause.
È come se immaginiamo che a un certo
Well,
punto
it's as if we imagine like a small little plant coming out. We imagine like a nice ground, and we put like water,
vediamo che escono
and
dei
we
fiori.
see some flowers coming up,
Ah,
some little plants.
che cosa
Say,
crediamo che
ah,
sia la causa di
what do
quelle
we
piante?
believe that it's the cause of those plants? Water.
Ma l'acqua da sola riesce
The
a
water by itself, can it give birth to plants?
Solo che noi non abbiamo visto
But
quando
we
hanno piantato i
haven't
semi. Noi non
seen
abbiamo visto i semi
when the
dentro, non
seeds were
conosciamo
planted. We
quello.
do not know
Quindi
that.
noi quello che
And
vediamo
so
è quello che
what we
sta
see
accadendo
is
nel
what
momento
is happening in the
presente,
present
perché
moment,
facciamo fatica
because
anche a ricordare
we have
quello che
even a
abbiamo
hard
mangiato ieri
time
a pranzo,
to remember what we ate yesterday at lunch.
ricordare le
So
azioni
to
del
remember
passato,
the
che
actions
cosa
of
è
the
successo,
past and
che
what
oggi si
happened
va a maturare.
that is ripening today.
Perciò, quando noi viviamo
And so
qualcosa
when
nel
we live
momento
something in the
presente,
present moment,
la nostra
our
tendenza è di
tendency
vedere
is
le
to see the
condizioni,
conditions,
l'acqua
the
che si
water
versa,
that is
come se
put there,
fossero le cause.
as if they were the causes.
Quindi noi di solito
And
diciamo,
so
sto
usually
vivendo
we say,
questo
okay, I'm living this because,
e nel perché
and in the
cerchiamo di
why,
puntare il dito a
we
ciò
try
che
to
sta
point the
accadendo
finger
nel momento
at
presente.
what is happening in the
Che sono
present moment. There
condizioni, non
are
sono cause.
conditions and not causes.
Le cause
The
avvengono.
causes happened before.
È come una volta che
It's
mi
like
trovavo a
once
Milano,
that I
abbiamo
was in
partecipato
Milan
come
and we,
company
as
a una sorta di
with
un
the company, we were
convegno
participating to a sort
tanti
of
anni fa a Milano. È
conference in
avvenuto,
Milan, convention.
magari dico così perché qualcuno si ricorderà.
I say it like this because someone
Milano
will
c'è un
remember.
posto
In Milan
eterno.
there is like a place with the thermal baths,
Lì, in questo posto c'era un convegno, abbiamo partecipato una volta.
hot springs, and in that place there was a conference, and I remember there was
Era un
a
medico
doctor,
specializzato
was a specialized
in
doctor
malattie
in
ambientali.
environmental
Non ricordo il
diseases. In
termine
the sense, I don't
tecnico
remember the
specifico,
technical
comunque era un
specific
medico
term, but he
specializzato in
was a doctor
malattie
specialized
che
in these
avvengono
diseases that
come
happen
risultato
as a
degli
result
aspetti
of
ambientali,
environmental aspects,
inquinamento,
so
eccetera, eccetera.
pollution and so
E
on.
lui ha detto una cosa che mi ha
And he said
colpito.
something that impressed me.
Diceva,
And he said,
fra che
between
uno vada a inquinare, quindi con la
one
macchina,
polluting
con qualunque cosa,
with the
inquina
car
l'acqua,
or
inquina la
the
terra,
water,
inquina
polluting
l'aria,
the
eccetera,
air
eccetera.
or so on,
In generale,
in general,
salvo casi molto
unless very
specifici,
specific
il
cases,
tempo che
the
ci
time
vuole
that
perché
goes
quell'inquinamento generato
from that pollution that was generated
vada a creare una malattia,
to
da quando
create
uno ha
a
un
disease,
inquinato
since
a
the moment
quando
that
qualcuno
one
si
had
ammala
polluted
a
until
causa di
one gets sick
quell'inquinamento,
because of that
di solito
pollution,
passano intorno a
usually
10 anni.
at least 10 years pass.
La nostra difficoltà,
Our difficulty
noi di
is
solito
that
abbiamo la
we in
memoria
general
come il
have a
pesciolino
memory like
acquario, no?
the fish in
È stato
the
detto una volta che
aquarium.
quei pesciolini
Like it
piccolini,
has, I heard once that
dorati,
those
rossi,
golden,
pesciolini rossi,
the
quindi hanno una
golden
memoria molto
fish have a
breve.
very short memory.
Quindi viene spiegato come se fosse nell'acquario, ha fatto un giro e
So
non si ricorda
once they
più,
have
no?
gone around the aquarium, they have already forgot that they did it, and we have a memory that is not that we check and see, okay, like 10 years we polluted so much, so now we have problems like this and that. We are very much on the immediate, on the present moment, but that doesn't really work like that.
Io vengo dal Brasile.
I come from Brazil, but I'm sure that many aspects in Italy are the same, but I cannot talk so much about Italy because I have a limited knowledge of history, of Italian history. I know a bit about Brazilian history, but if we check Brazil today, we have so many social problems that are not indifferent, really much heavier than what there are here. And one goes there, and I know many people that have been kidnapped. They are called.
Vengono rapite in modo veloce.
They are kidnapped in a quick way. They are taken with a car, the gun to the head. They're also to my mother, to my father, to many people that I know. And they are taken around the ATMs, take money, then they leave you somewhere, and then they go away with the car. And when we see something like this, the tendency is to point the finger to those that committed that action. But if we check those people, other than the fact that they are fully responsible for what they do, there is a history of violence, of abuse, that in Brazil has lasted for like 500 years. Brazil was one of the last countries in the world to abolish slavery. In Brazil, it was abolished like in 1890 something, a few generations ago. And not, and while in Australia the slavery was abolished more or less in the same period, but when they abolished it, they took a piece of land. The state donated to each family of slaves a piece of land, and they say that you're not slaves anymore, you're free, and now you can cultivate it, so now you have something for your self-sustenance. In Brazil, it is said that not only they maintained slavery in an illegal way for many years, but they made a cut on the face, literally, to the slaves, because in order to remember them that slaves they are and will always be. And so, to the former owners of the slaves, they paid like they made it so that the owners would pay a salary to the slaves, and the slaves had to pay for the rent and food, which was actually more expensive than the salary, and so they were still slaves anyway. And Brazil, the situation is still kind of the same, and a majority of really so many Brazilians come from these generations of slaves, and so what they earn really is not enough for survival, and it's normal. One eats like in a nicer restaurant, and a person that works in a restaurant earns in a month is like what people eating there spend like in one night. So there is a situation that is sustained. So when we see an act of violence that has a really important root of violence, the causes that generated the act of violence are in the present moment, or are they some things that are rooted in the history, in the years? We cannot judge the present without seeing the past. And if we check, okay, whatever we talk about, we look at the wars that are happening now, we look at the conflicts that are in our own society and so on. In order to be able to understand them a little bit better, we have to study history, we have to go back in time, we have to check what happened. Because then we have a more clear vision, we are able to see the causes to understand better the results. The point where I want to get to is mostly this, that, okay, both for the beautiful things, and there are many, and for the difficult and bad things, that there are also many of those, unfortunately, the things are not created from one moment to the other. Things are built. Now, for example, I see Matteo and Simona, they're coming in, and they got married. It's not that they got...
Oggi è stata una condizione.
Today was a condition, not the cause, for their marriage, for the wedding. One thing here, one thing there, and who knows how many lives.
Quindi quello che succede è che
So what happens is that the present moment, and there are beautiful things or difficult things, were never caused by the present moment. The present moment is the condition that allows to those causes that were created in the past to ripen.
qui abbiamo un problema non
Here there is a non-indifferent problem. Buddha explained to us that there are two types of ignorance. The word ignorance in Sanskrit is said avidya. A is negation, vid to see. So avidya means not seeing. The two types of ignorance are the ignorance of not seeing and the ignorance of seeing wrong. So the ignorance of seeing wrong, I'm convinced of something that it's not like that. The ignorance of not seeing, okay, my eye is closed, that's it, I don't see. The ignorance of not seeing is the fact that today, in the past, we are not able to see what are the causes that created the present moment. In the past. Maybe we can see some conditions, but we are not able to see the causes. Also because one of our mistakes is that we look for the cause, when actually the cause doesn't exist. There are the causes. It's like the example that we gave many times of the equation. If we have an equation that is complex, okay, there are many of us here today, sooner or later we'll do it. I've already said it many times, but it's not really the case. One chooses a number. Everyone should choose a number, like a small or big, whatever, and then after this number, one adds, or whether it wants to multiply, divide, sum, or subtract.
Diciamo che adesso passa qualcuno che prende nota del numero di ogni.
Now let's say that someone comes and takes note of the number of each one, and then you put them together, and then a result comes, right? A number comes, and that number could be like a simple 21. I really like that number. I'm a bit conditioned by the Buddhist things like 21 taras, 21 is an important number, maybe that's why I like it, but I like now the 21. So what happens is that, okay, we have this nice result of 21 together, thanks to whom? Who was it that chose the right number that brought us to 21?
Qual è la causa del 21?
What is the cause of the 21?
Chiunque può alzare la mano.
Anyone could raise the hand and say, I did it. Because if I had chosen a different way, then we wouldn't have got to 21. Isn't it?
Ma l'unico modo per poter capire il come mai.
But the only way to understand why we got 21 is to see each one of the numbers of the equation. And the complexity is that each one of the numbers of the equation, in its turn, is the result of another equation. And each number of that equation is the result of another equation. And so, to have an awareness, a total awareness of how, why is it like this, why is there 21, it's impossible. You can spend and look we can look for all possible ways, but what is really clear is that whether the equation is made out of 3 numbers or 5 or 5,000 or whatever, there is never one single cause. More causes put together that are summed with the conditions, and one transforms the other, and then bit by bit it becomes what it is. But there is one very clear thing: each number that is added in the equation changes the result of the equation. And if I sum them, then it increases. If I subtract a number, then it decreases. This is a very basic rules about of which we can trust. And so on one side there is the ignorance of not seeing the causes of the past, and today I'm not seeing the results that will be in the future, because seeing the present moment, I don't know what is happening today will cause in the future. I don't know this. It's like in quantum physics that says that we live in a probabilistic reality, not deterministic. And also from the point of view of physics, the one would say, yeah, we're talking about concrete things. If we sum this and that number, the result should be always the same. No, actually, according to physics, no. We live in a reality where we can make probabilistic calculation. We can check what is the probability that it is like this or like that, but we can determine how will it be. In Tibetan, it is said the future doesn't have one pre-established order. And so our ignorance of not seeing starts from the fact that in the present moment we don't see the causes that created the present moment in the past, and in the present moment not seeing the results of the actions that we are taking now that they will bring in the future. And in the middle of this, though, there is something that comes to our favor, that I know if I sum, the number increases, and if I subtract, the number decreases. Okay, we are here on this. So if I have an equation and I want the number to be higher tomorrow, then I add 1. What will be the result? I don't know, but I know that I'm going in that direction. If I subtract, I go in the opposite direction. We have 2 types of feelings, mainly 3 types. Mainly, we have 3 types. The sensation is as a part of our mind through which we experience the world. We have pleasurable feelings, unpleasurable feelings, and neutral feelings. The pleasurable feelings are described as all the feelings that when they are there, we want them to remain as long as possible, and that when they end, we want them to come back as soon as possible. This is a pleasant sensation. In Tibetan, the definition is Dewa. May all beings have happiness and its causes. So the word happiness, Dewa in Tibetan, its definition is an inner feeling, inner sensation. It's that feeling that we have when we meet someone that we love, when we see something beautiful, when we eat something nice. There are 1,000 possibilities, billion possibilities. But it's when I get in touch with something, whether it's like a memory, something that I see, something that I smell, it doesn't matter. I have an inner experience that I want it to last. I don't want it to end, and when it ends, I want it to come back as soon as possible. That is the so-called happiness, the pleasant sensation. On the other hand, Dungal, the suffering, unpleasant feeling, are all those feelings that when they are there, we want them to end as soon as possible, and when they go away, we don't want them to come back. Is that clear?
E poi ci sono le
And
sensazioni
then
neutre.
there are the neutral feelings. There are all those feelings that we have that when we have them, we care little whether they continue or not. When they finish, we are not sitting there thinking whether we want them to come back or not. So I have a pleasant feeling, okay, oh, how beautiful, I want it to end, so I have attachment. That the feeling ends, I want it to come back as soon as possible, so I project on something in order for it to come back. And then I have desire. I drank water, I felt nice,
Finito quel piacere,
and as that pleasure ends, what do I want? In order to have more pleasure, water.
noi in realtà
We,
poco ci importa
in
dell'acqua,
reality,
quello
care
che
little
vogliamo è la
about the water.
sensazione
We
di
want
piacere.
the pleasant feeling.
Dall'altra
On
parte,
the other hand,
faccio qualcosa,
I
mi
do
sento
something,
male, ho
I
una
feel bad,
sensazione
I have an
spiacevole,
unpleasant
finita
feeling,
quella
that
sensazione,
feeling
non
ends,
voglio che
I don't
torni,
want it to
io
come
la
back,
connetto con
I
un
connect
oggetto,
it with an
ho
object,
avversione
then
a
I have
quella.
aversion towards that.
Ci siamo? Ok. La difficoltà che noi
The
abbiamo
difficulty that
è
we
che
have
quando abbiamo
is
delle
that when we have some sensations, very often
quello in cui noi proiettiamo come
what we
ragione, causa
project
della
as
nostra
the
sensazione
reason, the
piacevole o
cause of our
spiacevole
pleasant or unpleasant
sono le
sensation are
condizioni
the
e non
conditions and not the causes.
Non so se è chiaro
I
questo.
don't know if this is clear.
Ok? Perciò
And so,
esiste un luogo dove negli
there is a
insegnamenti di
place
Buddha
where
ci
in
dà
the
una certa
teachings
coerenza
Buddha gives
per
us a
spiegarci,
certain
guarda,
coherence
ci
to
sono
explain
certi
us, look, that there are some
fisici,
behaviors, the physical,
verbali,
verbal, or
mentali,
mental
certi stati
behaviors, some
emozionali
mental
che
states
nell'equazione
that in the
fanno
equation
male.
they are
Spingono
harmful,
verso,
they
è un po'
push
come
towards,
sottrarre, no?
it's
È
like
un sommare.
subtracting, it's not like adding
E ci
up.
sono altri
And there are
aspetti
other
che
aspects
vanno a
that
aumentare,
go
vanno a
and
sommare.
increase.
Ok? Il punto dove arriviamo
The
negli
point
insegnamenti
where
del
we
Lam
want to
Rim
get in the
adesso
Lam
è,
Rim teachings now is
ok,
that,
io morirò.
okay, I will die.
Cosa succede dopo?
What will happen then?
Perché la morte è la
Because
conclusione di
death
un ciclo.
is the conclusion of a cycle.
Partiamo dal presupposto
Let's
che
start from the fact
dopo la morte ci sia
after
continuità.
death there is continuity.
Io sono convinto
I'm
di questo.
convinced of this.
Personalmente non ho
Personally,
nessun dubbio.
I have no
E
doubt.
questo è uguale in
And
tutte le
this
tradizioni
is the same
religiose,
in
tutte le
every
tradizioni
spiritual
spirituali.
religious
Si crede che la
tradition.
morte
It is
non è la
believed
fine
that
totale
death
di
is not
tutto,
the total
è un
end of
passaggio.
something, but is a passage.
Poi possiamo entrare in
Then we
mille
can
dettagli
get
su
into
come, di qua,
a
di là, la
thousand
volta precedente
details,
abbiamo
like on
parlato.
how and.
Però fatto sta che quando io morirò,
But the fact is
qualcosa
that
di
when
me
I will die, something of
continuerà.
me will continue.
Come continuerà?
How will it continue?
Cosa accadrà
What
dopo la
will
tua
happen after my death?
E qui
And here
non avviene il
it
fatto che ci
doesn't
sia una sorta di
happen that there is like a sort of
giudizio. Una volta ho visto anche
judgment.
in un contesto
I've also
buddista
seen it in the
spiegato
Buddhist
in questo modo,
context
che
explained in
secondo me
this
è
way
totalmente
that according
sbagliato
to me is completely wrong
è stato per me magari
in the
una delle
Buddhist
esperienze più
context. For
difficili
me
che ho mai vissuto.
was one of the most difficult experiences that I lived, like of trying to keep my mouth
Eravamo
shut.
stati invitati
We were
in
invited
un contesto
in a
tempio
context of a temple in the
con Lama
east with Lama
persone a cui ci tengono il
people
bene del mondo,
with
sono una
which
struttura molto grande,
we
eccetera,
really
eccetera. E quello che
care a
succede
lot,
con
but they are
tutte le
very
varie
big
religioni
structure.
molto
And what
spesso,
happens often
quando
with all
diventano una
the
religione di
religions
massa,
is that when they become like
hanno la tendenza di
very
andare
big
un po' a
mass
diluire
religion,
la
then
qualità degli
they have
insegnamenti,
like the
semplificare
tendency of
troppo le cose.
oversimplifying things and
E qui erano
decreasing the
entrati in una
quality of the
spiegazione
teachings.
che
And
per
here
me era
they got into
incredibile,
an
ed erano
explanation that
tutti
for me
contenti e
was
fieri di
terrible,
farci
and
vedere
they were all happy and
questo
proud
filmato
to
che
show
avevano
us
fatto in 3D,
this movie that they made in
e ci
3D,
portano in questo
and they
cinema
brought us
3D
in this
e ci fanno
3D
vedere
movie.
questo film
They showed
orrendo
us this tremendous, terrible
che era
movie.
la storia
There
di
was the
due
story of two
ragazzini
kids
che poi
that then,
lasciamo stare,
okay, let's leave it aside.
era proprio brutto
It was really,
perché
really
il
ugly
messaggio era
because the
sbagliato, era la
message was
storia di
wrong.
due
It was
ragazzini
like the
giovani
story of
adolescenti
two
che avevano un
young
rapporto
kids that
sessuale
had a
e
sexual
venivano incinta alla
intercourse, and
fine
she
dei
remained
conti, lei
pregnant, and
moriva
eventually she
nel
died
parto
as during
e poi dopo
as
si
she was
vedeva
giving
lei
birth,
che
and then you
dopo
will
la
see
morte
her
si trovava
after the
dinanzi
death
a
finding
questo
herself in front of
giudizio
this
di una sorta di
judgment
un
of a
essere
sort
lì
of
come un libro
being there with a book, showing all the things that she did during her life, and she did this, that was good, that was good, that was bad, and the other, that was bad, then you go to hell. And the guy that stayed alive, nothing, he just became a monk, and he saved himself, and life went well. No, here there is something wrong. I'm sorry, it's not the right message. They wanted to create a message to avoid unprotected intercourse in teenagers, but it was not really, according to me, in times that we live, that was most appropriate. But anyway, let's leave this thing aside, but there was that scene that when I saw it, I thought, this is really what should not be said, because it's not like death. There is not the Buddhist vision. When one, which is not just death, it's in any moment of life. Death is a continuity. After death, you continue your existence. It's not that we find ourselves in front of a judgment where there is someone looking at us and counting up what we did in our lives. And if, like among all things, I went more in the positive, wow, okay, and everything will go smoothly, I will go to live in a sort of paradise where everything will be fine. And if like things are a little bit bad, then I fall and I end up in a hell forever. It's not like that. This is an oversimplification that is extreme.
È molto più complesso e in parte più faticoso anche da accettare, da capire, ma funziona così.
It's more complex and also partly more difficult to understand, but it works like this. During our lives, we take a lot of actions, and every action is like a sort of seed that we plant. Every action, other than being a seed, is also a condition that ripens a seed that was planted in the past. So, in other words, the present moment is where we create the conditions to ripe the past and creating the conditions of what we will live in the future. When a cycle ends, it means that there opens the possibility for another. So a relationship ends, for example, I open for another one. I end a job, I open for starting a new one. I ended a life, then the possibility for another opens. So a cycle ends, and then there is a possibility for a new one. When a cycle ends, that moment between the ending of that cycle and the beginning of the second cycle, in the middle there is a space, in Tibetan it's called bardo, which is an intermediate state. And it's a very precious state because, for example, okay, I've ended a job, I've done that job for 10 years or 15 years, whatever, now I am with no job. Before finding a new job, how many different possibilities do I have in the working field? I mean, I can also not work. I can choose to make sandwiches. I can choose to go to study. I can choose to help here or there, or to go back to the same kind of job that I did and look for thousands of different possibilities. Comes to my mind a friend, talk about this in the book. It's called Romeo. He was very successful in work from the point of view of career and so on, and for many reasons at a certain point he was left with no job, and he said, okay, I have money aside, and he spent 1 year, okay, without even looking for a job. And then after a while he said, okay, now I have to start searching. And for as much as he searched, he could not find. So at a certain point he thought, okay, I have to do something. And he started creating his own micro business of glasses made with recycled bottles. So he will take bottles, he will cut them, making them colored and everything. He made beautiful glasses, and then this started to work, and energy moved, and he found like a work in his own field, and it all went very well. But what I want to say is that when a cycle ends and you're in the middle between
tante possibilità si aprono.
the start of a new one, many possibilities open. You can make like glasses with recycled bottles, you can travel, you can do thousands of things. First thing that he did is to come here and do volunteering for 3 months without knowing anyone or nothing. He just appeared like this. This because a possibility opened. So when a cycle ends, before a new one to open up, there is a space of opportunity.
Sono momenti molto preziosi.
And that's a very precious moment and also very delicate.
Perché quando si
Because
apre quello
when
spazio
that
di
space
opportunità,
of opportunity
è dove,
opens
secondo
is
le
when,
condizioni che vado a
according to
creare,
the
vado ad
conditions I
accedere
create,
a
I
una
access to
un seme piantato nel
one
passato
seed that was
piuttosto
planted in the
che un altro.
past or another one.
Vado ad accedere a
I
un certo
access
tipo di
to
cause
a
create
certain
o ad
type of
altre.
condition that was created
E una
or
volta
others.
che ho un
And
risultato, che le cause si
once
manifestano
a
come
result,
risultato, a quel punto
once
non possiamo fare altro
some
che
causes
vivere
manifest
quel
as a
risultato.
result, we cannot do anything else but to
In
live
senso
that
negativo
result.
è
In the negative
una
sense
volta che mi
is
sono
once that I
ammalato,
got sick,
ormai devo affrontare la
then
malattia, non
I
posso
need
più
to face the sickness. I
Quando si è
cannot
manifestato, ormai si è
escape
manifestato.
from it.
Ok? Perciò,
And so
quando uno muore,
when one dies,
si crea subito dopo la morte
right
questo
after that
spazio
there is
molto
this
delicato,
space that is
che
created
viene
that is
chiamato
very
il bardo,
delicate, that is called the bardo,
dove si aprono
where
tante
many
possibilità di rinascita.
possibilities of
E
rebirth
ciò che
open up.
determinerà
And
la
what will
nostra
determine
rinascita
our
non
rebirth
è una
is not
somma delle cose positive
a
e
sum of
negative
the
che abbiamo
positive and
fatto,
negative things that we have done,
è una
is one
condizione che
condition
va ad
that
accedere
goes
a
to
un certo
access
tipo di cause che
to a
abbiamo
certain
creato.
type
Per
of cause that
semplificare
we
però
create.
diciamo una causa piuttosto che un'altra.
To
Ricordiamoci che le
simplify, we
cause
say
sono mai
one cause or
singolari.
another one, but let's remember that
Per
causes are never
semplificare diciamo una
singular.
causa piuttosto che
But to
un'altra.
simplify, we say
Ogni
like
causa a
this.
sua volta è
Every
anche
cause
composta da
in
tante
its
cose.
turn is also made up of many things.
Perciò,
And so,
nel momento del
in the
bardo,
moment of
se io nel
Bardo,
momento del bardo creo
if
delle
in the moment of
condizioni
Bardo I
favorevoli,
create
riesco a
favorable
creare le
conditions and
condizioni
I'm
per
able to
far
create the
maturare delle
conditions to
cause
ripen
positive
some
o un
positive
risultato
causes, then I will have a
positivo.
positive result.
Se invece vado a far
If, on the other
maturare delle
hand,
cause
I
negative, ho un risultato.
ripen some negative causes, then I will have a
Il
negative
problema
result.
qual è?
The problem
stiamo
is
parlando di
that
cicli
we are talking about
complessi,
cycles that
cicli
are
lunghi,
complex, that are
che
long, and
in qualche
that
modo sono
somehow
cicli che vanno a
are cycles
influenzare
that
la nostra
influence
esperienza in un modo
our
molto
experience
forte.
in a very strong way.
Perché io a secondo
Because
di dove
me,
rinasco,
according to
come
where I will
rinasco,
be born and
ha un
how will I be
impatto
born,
enorme sulla
it has
mia
a huge
esperienza,
impact
la
on
mia
my
realtà
own
psicofisica.
experience, my psychophysical
È
reality.
possibile per esempio avere un
Is, for
karma di
example,
rinascita
possible
di
to have
un'azione
a karma
negativa,
of rebirth of
però
a negative action,
all'interno
but
ci
inside
sono
of
altri
that there are
cicli, perché
other
dentro una
cycles,
vita ci
because
sono
inside
tanti
of a
cicli.
life there are many
Sia
cycles.
quanto lunga è la vita, c'è il contesto
There is how long
familiare,
life is,
c'è lo
there is the
stato di
familiar
salute,
context, the
c'è
state of
un'infinità di
health,
cose.
there are so many
Ed è
things.
molto
And
classico, dentro
it's
una
very
qualcosa di
classical that
positivo avere
inside
un
of
ciclo
something positive you
negativo e
have a
viceversa.
negative cycle and so on.
Perciò, quando io mi troverò nel mio
And
bardo,
so when I will find myself
cosa
inside of a
posso fare
bardo,
oggi per
what I
assicurare che
will be
riuscirò
able
ad
to do
accedere a un
today
seme
in
virtuoso e
order to
avere
make
una
sure
rinascita
that I will
positiva?
access a virtuous
Cominciare a
seed and
uscirne
have
fuori.
a positive rebirth?
Devo lavorare
I need to
principalmente
work
su due
mainly
fattori,
on two factors,
cause e
causes
condizioni.
and conditions.
Perché
Because
quando io pianto un
when
seme
I
oggi,
plant a
io non
seed
so esattamente
today,
che risultato
I
darà.
do not necessarily
Però
know
una
what
cosa io
result
sono
it will give,
sicuro,
but
se io
one thing I'm
pianto un
sure,
seme
if I plant
amaro,
a sour seed,
porterà un frutto
it will
dolce?
bring a sweet fruit?
No.
No.
Se io vado sul terreno
If
e
I
pianto un sacco di,
go
pensate,
and
qualcosa di
plant so
dolce,
many
vado
strawberries,
la zucca?
maybe like some pumpkin, maybe it's more sweet, or mango.
In Italia non tanto.
No, in Italy that doesn't really work, but
Immaginiamo che piantiamo
let's
tanti
imagine
semi
that
di
we
cose
plant
dolci,
many
poi in
seeds
mezzo
of
a
sweet
questo
things, and in the
piantiamo
middle
delle
of
cose
this we
amare
also
piuttosto
plant
che
some
piccanti.
sour or
Il fatto che
spicy
ci siano
things.
tante piante
The fact that there are
dolci,
many
tanti semi dolci, fa
sweet
di quel seme
plants
amaro
and seeds
diventare
doesn't
dolce?
make it so that that sour seed becomes sweet.
Quando cresce, quando quel
When
seme di
that seed
peperoncino
of like
cresce,
the
c'è il
pepper, the
peperoncino,
chili
lo mangi,
pepper,
sembra mango?
will it
Perché è in
taste
mezzo
like
ai semi di
mango because
mango.
it's in the middle of some mango seeds?
Sempre piccante
Will always
rimane.
be spicy,
E il contrario anche.
and the other way around as well. So if I have like a field of chili peppers, and then I plant some mango there, then the mango will still be a mango. And similarly, I can do a lot of negative things, and this doesn't take away the fact that my positive actions will bring positive results. And I can also take a lot of positive actions, but it doesn't make it so that the negative seeds that I planted will give negative results. That very important philosophical sentence, that one thing is one thing and another thing is another thing. One doesn't take away the other. So what can we do today? Is to stimulate ourselves through those three forces that we talked about before, so to prevent, to forecast the benefits to obtain, to avoid the negative results, and for a moralistic reason, and to learn to stop to plant negative seeds and to learn how to create favorable conditions. And so here there is one first question, that is, okay, what are the negative seeds? The Lam Rim, the path is a little bit different. Today, if we were in a very traditional context, so to speak, then I would have gone straight to the point. But if you go straight to the point here, then we get in a very wrong place. So we take a bit of a different route. I need to understand what types of actions bring what kind of results. And then I need to understand what are the results that I want to avoid. And then to go back to the actions.
L'odio.
Hatred.
Il voler la sofferenza.
Wanting the suffering of the other. The rejoicing of the suffering of the other, which is also not so far from our reality.
Okay. Volendo o meno, consapevole.
Whether we want it or not, whether we are aware or not, it brings negative results. Our body shows us that very clearly. In a few words, hatred, or anger, mainly with the intention of harming, and then from this there is envy in the middle, there is jealousy, there is attachment, there is desire. Because when I really want something, in the path to obtain it, there will be an obstruction, and so I am ready to eliminate that. And then the negative actions of violence, the verbal violence, mental violence, are, in a few words, what are described as negative actions, non-virtuous, and are those actions that will bring results of suffering. And on the other hand, we have the so-called virtuous actions. Let's remember always that the definition of virtuous and non-virtuous is not something that is in the religious field. Virtuous is what once it's a virtuous action is an action that when its results ripen, they ripe as a virtuous, as a pleasant sensation, experience. An action that when it gives results ripens with a negative sensation, then it's a non-virtuous action. So we could also say a sane thing or a harmful action. So the action caused by anger, jealousy, envy, extreme selfishness, and so on, bring towards suffering. Actions taken with love, gratitude, compassion, respect, generosity are some examples of what brings towards a positive result.
Adesso,
and so now, there is a point in the Lam Rim that is that after you have seen the certainty of death, to bring us to make a sort of picture of what we don't want. What are the things that by all means we want to avoid?
che noi vogliamo
And
evitare.
what we want to avoid at the basis is suffering.
E purtroppo se noi
And
guardiamo
unfortunately, if we check the reality of the world where we find ourselves without going far,
esistono situazioni di
there are
tanta
situations,
sofferenza, no?
are there situations of intense suffering?
Ci sono.
Yes.
Ok? E poi
And then,
se noi non siamo in situazioni
if
di
we are
forte
not in
sofferenza,
situations of intense
fisica,
suffering that is
eccetera,
physical
non è
or
perché noi
and so
siamo
on,
meglio
it's
di
not
altri,
because we are better than the others.
perché in questo momento abbiamo una
Because in this
condizione
moment we
favorevole.
have a favorable condition.
C'è un film che fa vedere
There is a
questo
movie
in
that
modo
shows this
molto
in a very
grafico,
graphical
molto
way
forte.
that is very strong.
Ci ho anche pensato una
And
volta
I've
che
also
quando sarei arrivato a
thought
questo momento degli
about that,
insegnamenti,
okay, once that
più che
I will
spiegare
get to this
qualcosa,
type of
farei vedere
this
questo.
point of the teachings, more than explaining
Però
something,
è
I
un
will
film
show
che
that
vuole
movie.
tanto stomaco
But it's a movie
e
that
tanto
needs
pelo sul
a lot of
stomaco.
hair on
E
the
anche
stomach.
quando io l'ho visto sono rimasto una
And
decina di
also,
giorni a pensare
when I saw it,
molto molto forte.
I watched it, I
Il film che
remained
viene
thinking about it
chiamato,
for
io l'ho
10 days.
visto
It's a
nella
movie
sua lingua
called,
originale che è in spagnolo,
I saw it in
viene
the original
chiamato
language,
Lojo,
which
con
is
la piattaforma.
Spanish, and it's called Lojo, which is like a
Sa che in
platform.
italiano si chiama
I think in Italian it's
Il
called
buco,
The Hole.
ok? È un film dove
It's a movie
la
where
storia è
the
di questa
story
sorta di
is of this
prigione che
sort
quando
of
non entra
sort of
non sa
prison.
neanche di essere
Then
una prigione, perché in
once
realtà
one gets in the
entra
prison, doesn't even know
consapevolmente.
that one is in a prison because
E una
and
delle domande che viene
gets
fatta
there
quando
with
uno entra
awareness.
in quel luogo
And one of the
è
first questions
qual è il tuo
that
cibo
one is
preferito,
asked
fra varie
is,
domande.
what is your favorite food among various
È una
questions?
sorta di
And it's a
prigione,
sort of
immaginate
prison,
un
let's
palazzo
imagine like
molto alto,
a very, very tall building,
dove in mezzo c'è una
where in the
piattaforma
middle
che
you have a
scende,
platform that goes down,
e quando parte dai piani
and
più alti,
when it starts from the
sopra c'è
higher
una cucina
floors,
enorme, meravigliosa,
there
che
is a
prepara
very,
con i
very
migliori
beautiful
chef.
kitchen,
Prepara
very
ogni
big,
giorno
with
il piatto
very
preferito di
expert
tutti quelli che
chefs,
sono lì dentro.
and prepares
Immaginiamo,
the
andiamo
favorite dish
tutti a
of
vivere da
each one
qualche
that is
parte
there.
e
Okay,
ogni
let's
giorno
imagine that
preparano il piatto
we all
preferito
go
di
to
ognuno
live
di
somewhere,
noi.
and every day they prepare the favorite dish
Diciamo,
of each
mangeremo
one of
bene?
us. Will we say that
Uno
we
direbbe di
live
sì, no?
nice, we eat nicely?
Poi
One will
dipende
say
cosa è
yes.
dichiarato come piatto preferito, però quello è un altro discorso. Però mancherebbe da mangiare per ognuno di noi?
So,
No.
would we lack food?
Purtroppo sì.
No.
Cosa succede qui?
What happens
Ogni
there?
giorno
Every day
preparano il
they
piatto
prepare
preferito
the
per
favorite
ognuno e lo
fish
mettono
for
tutto in
favorite
questa
dish for
piattaforma.
everyone, and they put it on this
Man mano
platform.
che la
And
piattaforma
as the
scende,
platform goes down,
in ogni piano dove
on
arriva ci sono
every
due
floor where
persone
it gets to,
e loro
there are
hanno
two people,
per un certo periodo di
and
tempo
for a
per
certain,
mangiare, possono mangiare
they have a
tutto quello che
certain
vogliono, non
period
possono
of time
mettere del cibo da
to
parte,
eat, and
devono
they can eat
mangiare
whatever they want and can,
poi la
and then
piattaforma
they
scende,
can't put
va
food
dal piano
aside,
di
that
sotto e
platform
va.
goes down, and so on, and they
Quello che
eat.
succede
What happens,
purtroppo, man mano
unfortunately,
che la
is that as the
piattaforma
platform
scende,
goes
non
down,
rimane cibo,
there is not
perché
any
uno
food
non mangia
left,
solo il suo,
because
mangia di
one
più di
doesn't
quello che
eat
ha subito
just his own food,
e non
but
prende
more
in
than that,
considerazione
and
gli
doesn't
altri,
take into
creando
consideration the
tanta
others,
fame, eccetera.
creating a
Quindi
lot of
questo
hunger
succede.
and so on to
La
those that are
caratteristica interessantissima di
lower.
questa
The very
storia
interesting
è che dopo
characteristic of this
30
story is that
giorni
after 30
uno si
days,
risveglia
one
in un altro
wakes
piano.
up on another
Quindi
floor.
se adesso sei nel piano
So if
terzo,
now
e
you're on the
sempre
third
mangiare
floor,
bene,
then you always
a un
eat
certo punto
nicely,
ti
then at a
addormenti,
certain
ti
point you
risvegli e
fall
magari
asleep,
sei al piano
and you wake up
150.
and you're at the floor 150.
Poi dopo un
And
mese
then
ti
after a
risvegli,
month you
magari
wake
sei
up
al piano
again, and maybe
300,
you're
poi
at the
magari
floor
torni al piano
300,
5,
or
non
maybe
lo
you go
sai
back
mai
to the
dove
fifth
arriverai.
floor. You never know where you will get
La
to.
cosa strana
And the strange
è
thing
che
is
fa
that
vedere
it
proprio che
shows
quando uno è nei piani
really that
sopra,
when one is in the higher
anche se è
floors,
stato
even
appena il
if
mese prima e ha
just a
memoria, ha
few
ricordo
months
di
before
come
and
era
he has
difficile essere
memory
nei
of
piani
that,
sotto,
being
uno
in the
mangia
lower
di più di
floors,
quello
one
che doveva
eats
e
more
poco si
than
importa di quelli dei
he
piani sotto.
he has to and needs to, and cares little about those that are lower.
È molto forte questo film. Però
And
quello
this
che fa
movie
è
is
che
very
esistono
strong,
i
but
reami
it
degli
shows that, okay,
ed esistono
there are
gli
the
inferni.
Deva realms and the Hell
E
realms.
noi non siamo
And
meglio
we
di altri
are not
perché
better
siamo
than
in un
others
reame
because
di
we are in a
meglio, siamo in
realm
un contesto
or
dove ci abbiamo
another.
tante
We
condizioni
are in a
favorevoli.
context where
Noi
we
abbiamo
have many favorable
condizioni
conditions.
migliori,
We have
ma
better
questo non fa di
conditions,
noi
but this
meglio
doesn't
di
make us
altri.
better than the others.
Quando se mai noi dovessimo trovarci in quella
If we
situazione,
had to find
non so quale
ourselves in
sarebbe
that
la nostra
situation,
reazione.
I wouldn't know what our reaction would
Ok?
be.
Perciò, quando Buddha Shakyamuni descrisse
And so when Buddha Shakyamuni
le varie
described
possibilità
the
di
various
tipologie di
possibilities and
rinascita,
types of rebirth,
Ha diviso in due tipi
He
principalmente.
divided them into two types mostly, the rebirths of more suffering and of less suffering.
Dove le
Rebirths where
condizioni
the causes, the physical
esterne,
and
ambientali,
external environmental
più
conditions are
favorevoli
more
o quelli
favorable,
dove le
and
condizioni
those
sono
where
meno
the
favorevoli.
conditions are less favorable.
E quindi se io rinasco in un
And
luogo dove
so,
non
if
c'è
I am
da
reborn in a
mangiare,
place where there is no food,
soffrirò di più o no?
will I suffer more or not?
Sì.
Yes.
Ok? E quando noi guardiamo intorno a
And
noi,
when we look around
quante
us,
situazioni e
how
contesti in questo
many
mondo ci
situations
sono
and contexts
dove c'è
do we have in
molto
this world
difficile?
that are very difficult?
Purtroppo ci sono tante,
Unfortunately, there are many,
sia causate
both
dall'essere umano,
caused by
purtroppo,
human beings
e in certi casi
and
per
in some
condizioni
cases also
naturali di un
for
luogo, eccetera.
natural conditions of the
Perciò,
place.
i tre reami che Buddha descrive inferiori è un reame che
So
è
the
preso
three realms that Buddha
principalmente
described as
dove la
lower
sofferenza principale è
is
l'abuso,
where the main
il
suffering
controllo
is
da parte di
abuse,
altri,
the control
tra virgolette la
by
schiavitù,
the others, and
la paura
so to
costante
speak, the
della propria
slavery, the
sopravvivenza,
constant fear
la
for
paura
one's
di
own
essere
survival,
uccisi
the
da altri,
constant fear of
che è
being
il
killed
reame
by
animale.
others, which is the animal
Quando noi
realm.
pensiamo al reame
When we
animale,
think
noi di
about the
solito
animal
pensiamo ai
realm,
nostri
usually
bei
we think
canini,
about our
ok?
nice little
Questi
dogs
sono quelli
and so
che
on. These are those that
sono quelli che sono
are
nei reami dei dei e dentro dei reami animali.
like inside
Ma se noi
God's
pensiamo ai
realm,
giorni
inside
d'oggi,
of the
pensiamo al
animal
reame
realm. But if
animale,
we think about the animal realm today,
prevalentemente
predominantly,
oltre il
other
90
than
passa per
the
cento degli animali che
90%
esistono nel pianeta oggi, vivono
that
in prigionia.
of the animals that are in the world now, they live in prison.
Sono dove?
They are
Poli,
they are
maiali,
chickens, pigs,
mucche
cows,
e altre forme di
and
animali che sono animali
other
che vivono
forms
totalmente in
of
sorta di
animals that
campi di
live
concentramento.
in a sort of concentration
Non sono
camp.
vite facili.
Those are not easy lives.
Quindi rinascere lì.
And so to be reborn there,
Poi, se uno è,
then if
come io,
one,
che ne so, non è perché è la mia, ma
it's not because it's
mica hanno una
my
vita molto bella, secondo me.
my dogs
Quello è un altro discorso,
have a
anche
very
perché sono i
beautiful
miei
life
cani,
according
ma
to me, but
vivono,
not because they are
oltre
my
che non
dogs,
mancar
but
di
because
nulla, hanno
other
un livello
than
di libertà come
not
di solito
lacking
i cani
anything,
non
they
hanno.
have like a level of
Quindi
freedom that usually dogs
ben
don't have.
venga, ma
So,
di solito non è
but
questa
usually
la
it's
possibilità
not
quando
that
parliamo
the
di reami
possibility
animali.
when we talk about the animal realm.
Poi Buddha descrisse
Then
i
Buddha
reami degli spiriti
describes
famelici.
the realm of the hungry ghosts.
I reami degli spiriti
The
famelici
realm
sono
of the
esseri
hungry
che
ghosts
vengono descritti
is
come
of
esseri con le
beings that are
stesse
described with
capacità
the same
cognitive di un essere
cognitive
umano,
capacities of a human being,
però che a
but
causa di
that
fame e
because of
sete
hunger
estrema
and thirst
non
that are
riescono a
extreme,
sviluppare
they
e
are not
utilizzare le
able
proprie capacità.
to develop and use one's
Sono
own
esseri che passano
capabilities.
la loro vita
Those are
nella
beings that
fame e
spend their
nella sete.
lives in
Vengono
the
descritti con
thirst
la
and
gola
hunger,
molto piccola con
described
dei
with a
nodi in
very
gola,
small throat
con
with some
la
knots in
pancia
the throat and
estremamente gonfia
with the
all'interno,
belly
con
that
il
is
fuoco
extremely
all'interno,
swollen
e
and
anche quando
big with a
riescono a
fire
bere
inside. And
una
even when
goccia
they're able
d'acqua o
to drink
mangiare un
a
grano
drop
di
of
cibo,
water or to eat a
quello non
grain
appena entra viene
of food,
bruciato
as
e non
soon
porta
as it
nessuna
gets
soddisfazione.
inside, it's burnt and
L'ultima
doesn't
volta
bring
che
any
stavo ricevendo
satisfaction.
insegnamenti su queste cose, ho
Once
portato mio
that I
maestro in
received
Tibet
teachings on this,
delle foto
I brought to my master in
di
Tibet
purtroppo
some
persone che
pictures of
esistono in
people that
certi paesi dove
unfortunately
c'è uno
exist
stato di
in some
fame
countries
estrema,
where there is an extreme state
e
of
quando qualcuno
hunger.
è in uno stato
And
che
when
non
one
mangia
is in a
assolutamente di
state
fame
that doesn't
estrema,
eat absolutely
fisicamente cosa
anything,
succede?
physically what happens
Pancia
is
gonfia,
that it gets a
pelle e
swollen
ossa,
belly
collo
and
finto,
it's like
come
with a
descritto
very
negli insegnamenti di Buddha.
small
Ok?
neck,
Sono
tight
esseri
neck,
umani?
just as
Sì.
described in the books of Buddha.
Hanno lo
Those are
stesso
human beings,
potenziale?
yes, but
Sì, ma a
they
causa
have the
delle
same potential,
condizioni non
but
hanno la
according to the
capacità di
conditions, they are
svilupparlo.
not able to develop that
Perché
potential.
quando uno
Because
non
when
riesce a
one
nutrire
is
il
not able
proprio
to
corpo,
nourish
anche la mente
his own
perde le
body,
proprie
also
capacità.
mind loses its capabilities.
Una delle cose fondamentali per
One
una
of the
mente
fundamental
sana,
conditions for a
equilibrata,
healthy,
una mente
sane,
capacitata,
balanced mind,
capace di
that
amare,
a mind that is capable of
eccetera,
loving and
è
so
una
on,
mente che sia parte
is a
come minimo ai principi di un
is a
cervello sano, di una mente, di un corpo che è nutrito bene.
is at
Ci sono
least
diverse
a
ricerche che hanno
minimum
fatto vedere che non dare il
nourished body.
corretto nutrimento a una
So there have
persona
been also some
aumenta il livello di
researches
violenza.
that to not give the correct nourishment to a person increases the levels of violence.
E il terzo
The
reame
third
inferiore vengono chiamati reami
lower
degli
realm
inferni,
is called the hell realm.
che poi se andiamo a prendere il testo di
And if we take the text of Paponka Rinpoche, Lama Tsongkhapa, and so on, here there is the description that goes very much in detail into each one of the 16 hells. We don't need to get into that. It's divided between the 8 hot hells and the 8 cold hells. The hot hells are contexts where there is a lot of suffering and a lot of hatred. Once Lama Ganchen described that, if you imagine the hot hells, okay, you imagine like putting many people with a lot of hatred together. If you're in a context where you're treated with a lot of violence and hate, and you react with more hate, you live in a vicious cycle, practically to infinite. There is who says, no, hell doesn't exist. Shantideva described in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara that hells are a mental creation. And there is a situation that was described once that profoundly impressed me. She was a young woman. She was in high school. And during one day in high school in the United States, she knew
la sorella di un'amica. La sorella di questa amica ha lavorato con lei.
The sister of this friend was doing something in the lab of the high school, and there was a fire. And unfortunately, she got fire on her body, and she got like a great part of her body that was burned. Long story short, she ended up in coma, for like 10 days. And then she got out of it, and then slowly got better. But the strongest thing is that when she woke up from the coma, she was in a very strong state of shock, and she couldn't speak. Slowly they helped her to speak, and she told that what she had lived during those 10 days that she was in coma, that for her they seemed like infinite, is that she was in a sort of nightmare where she was getting abused, and then she was getting burned. Then she was getting abused and then she was getting burned again. And then going back from the beginning, and so on. And then abused and then burned. A person that is in a state like this, one will say, no, but it's in a dream, it was just there in the hospital, nothing happened. That suffering, did she live it or not? Yes. This is a hell. Those 10 days looking from outside, for who lived an experience like that, how long was it for who lived that experience? Time is relative. I had prepared, after lunch I will bring it, but it's part of these teachings. There is like a table that Lama Tsongkhapa explains according to the teachings of Buddha with the relativity of time. Each realm, how long does it last in relation to the others. It's nice, interesting, but the fact is that when we talk about both of the God realms and also about the hell realms, the life is much longer. So those 10 days that girl stayed in that state, what she had lived was not 10 days. It was a time that was infinitely long. And for as much as it's an experience that is created by mind, is real, that one lives, and then that cycle ends and you start all over, innumerable times. In the Lam Rim of Paponka Rinpoche, there is a whole description of one recurrent hell, where it's said about one that goes to collect wood with a lot of effort, puts it in a big pot and then throws himself in the pot, gets himself cooked, dies there in a disastrous situation, and then boom, again he's outside and repeats the same thing. According to me, for the majority of us, an example of someone that is so close to us, like this girl that is also alive today, is much closer to our reality than many of these stories.
Se noi andiamo a vedere l'inferno,
If we go and
è molto
check,
più vicino di
hell
quello che noi
is
possiamo
much closer
pensare.
than
In
we would
realtà è un
think.
click interno della mente in certi casi.
Actually,
Sono certi stati
it's
emotivi
some
dove uno entra in un loop
emotional
di
states where
odio,
one
un
gets
loop
into
di
a
paura,
loop of
che
hate
può
and of
essere
fear
uno stato
that
di
can be a
sofferenza.
state of intense suffering.
Quindi quando parliamo delle
So,
rinascite
when we talk
nell'inferno,
about rebirths in
esistono
hell,
luoghi
there are
fisici
physical
che
places
portano a un livello
that
di
bring
sofferenza
to a
infernale?
level of hellish
Sì,
suffering, yes,
in tante forme diverse,
in
sia
many
di persone
different
che sono
forms,
rinate
like both
come esseri
from
umani
people
e
that
poi
were
in un
born in
certo
a
momento
human
della vita
form
si
and then at
trovano
a
in
certain point of
situazioni
life they
infernali.
were in hellish situations.
E purtroppo
And
ci sono
unfortunately, there are those
sia altri
situations
tipi di contesti
and
di vita
other
molto
types of contexts.
ok? Oltre a questo ci sono tutte le
And other than
possibilità
this, there
che
are all the
uno
possibilities
nasca in una sorta
that
dobbiamo
one
capire un po'
is
l'inferno, è un
reborn
po' come
inside
per
of a
dire
sort of to understand
rinascere
better the hell.
in una
Okay, it's a
sorta
bit
di
like saying
incubo
to be reborn in a
in
sort
cui
of
uno è
nightmare
bloccato
where
lì,
one
o
is
un incubo
stuck
che
in a
dura
loop,
molto tempo.
a
E uno
nightmare
non
that
finisce
lasts a
quella
very long
storia
time. One
finché
doesn't
quella
end that story
forza che ha creato
until
quell'evento
the force
rinascita
that
non si è
created that
consumato.
rebirth doesn't get consumed.
Perciò se
And
qualcuno mi
so,
chiede
if one
l'inferno
asks,
esistono, io direi assolutamente sì.
does hell exist?
È
I
un
will
argomento
definitely
un po'
say
tabù.
yes, it's quite a taboo subject.
Una delle ragioni di
One of the
questo è
reasons
perché
for
molto
this is that
spesso il
very
concetto
often the
dell'inferno
concept of
è
hell
stato utilizzato
has
per
been
noi per
used
metterci paura.
to
È stato
put
utilizzato
fear
per
on
dire, ah,
us.
fai
It has
questo
been
se no
used
vai
to
all'inferno.
say, okay, do
Pochi
this,
giorni fa ho
otherwise you go
avuto
to
un
hell.
incontro con una
A few
persona
days ago, I
che
met a
io
person
sono rimasto
that
veramente
was really
un
left
po' in
like
shock.
a bit like in shock.
Era in un contesto totalmente
It
fuori
was
dalla
in
nostra
a
cultura,
totally different,
cultura totalmente molto orientale, ok? Altra
totally
cultura
different
fuori dalla nostra
cultural
realtà.
context, like in Eastern world. So
Qualcuno viene e mi dice,
someone
no, io
comes to me
questa
and
cosa
says,
non lo
no,
potrò mai
now this
dire
thing I will never be able
e
to
mai
say
fare
or do,
perché se no andrò
because
all'inferno.
otherwise I will go to hell.
Però mentre lo
But
diceva lo
as
faceva
she
comunque,
was
senza dire
saying
che lo
this, she will
faceva.
do it without
Io ero lì che
saying that
guardavo e
she
dicevo,
was
ma tu
doing
lo
it.
stai facendo? No.
And I was like, but you are doing it. No.
Sai, esiste certe
You
volte
know,
questa
there are
strana
sometimes
idea
this strange
che
idea
uno si
that
possa nascondere
one
dietro un
can
dito
hide
per non farlo
behind
vedere.
a finger,
Io no, ok? O esiste il concetto
or
quello
there
che di
is the
cui non si dice
concept
non
of,
esiste.
okay, like what is not said doesn't exist.
Quindi no, io non posso
So,
pensare quello perché
no, I
vado
cannot think that
all'inferno.
because otherwise I go to hell.
Ah, ma non lo dico che lo
I
penso,
know
quindi non
I
lo penso.
don't
Ci sono
I
cose
don't
strane.
say it, so I don't think it.
Però fatto sta che qua era l'esempio per
But the
me,
point is that
giusto
here it was the
recentemente, di
example
questo
for me
concetto
recently of
dove
this concept
l'inferno viene usato
where
come una
hell is
sorta di
used as a
minaccia.
sort of threat.
Fai questo se no vai
Do this,
all'inferno,
otherwise you
fai
go to
quello,
hell.
eviti quello se no vai
Don't do
all'inferno.
that, otherwise you go to hell.
Ok? E c'è un momento in cui uno manda
And there is
all'inferno,
a
dice,
moment where
ma
one
basta con
sends
questa cosa
to
di
hell the
cercare di
hell. Okay,
mettermi
enough with
paura.
this thing to put
E noi
fear on me.
pensiamo che
And we
l'inferno sia
think
non
that
che
hell
altro
is
una
nothing
sorta di
but a sort of
strumentalizzazione e di creazione
instrumentalization
per
and
far paura.
creation to put fear on us.
Purtroppo la
And
sofferenza in
unfortunately,
generale
suffering in
purtroppo molto
general
spesso è stata
has
strumentalizzata.
been used as a
Con
tool
buone intenzioni e con cattive
with good
intenzioni.
intentions and bad intentions.
Se io vedo tu che stai
If I
correndo
see that
verso
you're
un vallone
running
per farti del
towards the
male
cliff
e
to hurt
cerco di
yourself
farti
and I try
fermare
to stop you,
e a un certo
and at a
punto lo
certain
dico in tutti
point
i modi, tu
I
non riesci a
tell it
fermarti, posso anche
in
accettare, però
whatever
è una
way
buona
and you're not
intenzione
stopping, then maybe I
cercare
can
di non
also
farti fare quello. In certi
use
contesti
that as a
questo
tool to
avviene,
try to
proprio
not
nei tempi in cui
make
viviamo
you
non
do that.
funziona.
In the times where we
Perciò
live, that doesn't work.
quando noi parliamo dell'inferno
So when we talk
non è
about
una
hell, it's
minaccia,
not a threat.
non è una certezza che dovremo per forza andare, ci sono l'inferno, quindi per forza dovremo andare.
It's not a
Ma
certainty
è
that there
una
is hell and
perdita
we have to go there, but
a
it's
cui
a
vogliamo evitare.
possibility that we want to avoid.
Quindi torniamo alle
So we
azioni.
go back to the actions.
Perché quello che io vivo è un
Because
riflesso di
what I
quello che
live
dentro di
is the
me.
reflection of what's inside of me.
Perciò
And so
mi fa venire in mente anche
comes to my mind
c'era una volta un maestro.
once that there was a master,
Era un monaco anziano.
was
C'è
an
questa
old
storia, io
monk.
i nomi mi dimentico sempre.
I always forget
Comunque sia,
names, but
si racconta
anyway,
che lui aveva un
it is
forte
said
livello
that
di compassione.
he had a
E lui
strong
voleva
level
essere
of
dove c'era
compassion and
più
he wanted to
sofferenza in
be
assoluto.
where there was
E lui
the
stava per
most
morire.
suffering and he was
E
about to
lui
die.
metteva questa
And he
intenzione fortissima
was putting this very strong intention, I want to be reborn in hell. I want to go where there is the most need. I want to be reborn in hells. And as he was dying, he started to have some visions of very beautiful things, and he was like, no, 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 it's not there that I have to go.
E quindi è un po' questo
And
certe
so,
volte che uno che in realtà
one that in
ha la
reality
compassione, la
has
saggezza,
compassion,
anche se va
wisdom,
all'inferno,
even if he goes to hell, is not in hell.
perché l'inferno
Because
non
hell
è un
is
luogo
not a place, a specific physical place
Prima di tutto,
where you are
nel buddismo
condemned
dice
to.
che gli
First of
inferni
all,
non sono realtà
Buddhism is said that hell is not
infinite
uh,
per l'eternità,
an infinite
ma
reality
sono
that
realtà
goes
di
on
tanta
endlessly,
sofferenza
but it's
che
a reality
finché
with
uno la
a lot of
vive,
suffering
la
that as
sensazione è
one
come se
lives
fosse
it,
eterno.
the feeling is as if it was eternal.
Poi
And
il
then
tempo è relativo
time is relative.
e uno rimane
And
lì
then
finché
one stays there
quella forza non
as
si
long
consuma,
as that force
forza
is
karmica non
consumed,
si
that
consuma.
karmic force is consumed.
Quindi il primo punto qui, il
And so
punto
the
di
first
arrivo
point
qua è
here we want to get to
io non voglio
is
soffrire.
I don't want to suffer.
E credo che siamo tutti
And I
d'accordo su
believe
questo.
that we all agree on this.
Non vogliamo entrare in
We
situazioni di
don't want
forte
to get
sofferenza.
into
È
situations
un
of
po' come,
strong suffering.
diciamo che io adesso lasciamo
Let's
stare
say
un po'
that now,
l'inferno.
okay,
Io
let's
mi mettessi a
leave the
parlare della
hell
demenza
aside a
senile
bit and let's talk about
o dell'Alzheimer.
Alzheimer or dementia
Io chiedo, c'è qualcuno qua che vuole arrivare a quello?
and ask ourselves, is there someone here that wants to get there? Wants to get to that?
Sicuri di
Are
non
you
voler
sure
andare
that you
alla
don't want to
demenza
get to
senile piuttosto che l'Alzheimer?
dementia or
Certi?
Alzheimer? Are you sure of that?
Adesso ci tocca
Okay, now
evitare le
we
cause.
need to avoid the causes.
Per esempio,
For example,
esiste nei tempi d'oggi
there
un
is in
aumento
times of
non
today
indifferente
an
di
increase that is
Alzheimer
non
e demenza
indifferent
senile.
of Alzheimer and dementia.
Una delle
One of
cause
the
che è stata
causes
evidenziata
that has been
è
highlighted
la
is
quantità
the
enorme di
quantity
microplastica
of
che c'è all'interno
microplastics
del
that is
nostro
inside of
corpo
our
e
body
conseguentemente
and
all'interno del
consequently
cervello.
inside of our brain.
Ho letto uno
I
studio
read
che
a study
parlava
that
di
it was talking about the fact
hanno
that
fatto le autopsie
they
sulle
did
persone che avevano
autopsia
morti con Alzheimer e
of people
principalmente con
dying with
demenza senile
Alzheimer
seguito
or
dal
with
trattamento.
dementia, autopsy.
E avevano trovato nel cervello di
And they
queste
found
persone
in the
facendo
brains
l'autopsia,
of these people,
differentemente di quelli che non avevano queste malattie,
comparing,
un cucchiaio
comparing
d'azeite
them with those that didn't have those diseases, about a tablespoon of plastic inside their
Perciò
brain.
io non voglio avere
So
demenza
I don't want to
senile.
have
Quando ho visto questo, che cosa ho
dementia,
fatto?
and when I saw
Dieta
this,
senza plastica.
I tried to follow a diet without plastic, which is not a
Roba
joke.
seria e
It's a
faticosissima.
very serious and difficult thing.
Non usare i bicchieri di
Not
plastica,
use plastic glasses,
non comprare
to
il
not
cibo
buy
nella
food
plastica,
that is packaged in
non
plastic,
usare
to not
vestiti
use clothes
che hanno le
that have
microplastiche,
microplastics,
eccetera,
and
eccetera.
so on.
Ok? È serissimo,
It's very serious.
non è uno scherzo.
It's not a joke.
È una cosa estremamente
It's an
seria per la
extremely
nostra
serious
salute, questa
thing
cosa qui.
for our health.
Quindi se io voglio
So,
evitare
if I
l'Alzheimer,
want
voglio
to
evitare
avoid Alzheimer, I
una
want to avoid
degenerazione cognitiva non
a
indifferente,
cognitive
devo evitare
degeneration,
le cause
is
che
not
portano
indifferent. I
alla
need to avoid
degenerazione
the causes
cognitiva.
that bring to that
Fra
degeneration.
le cause che
And among the
portano alla
causes that bring to
degenerazione
that,
cognitiva c'è
there
l'uso
is
dell'alcol,
the use of alcohol,
l'infiammazione al
the
cervello, più il cervello si
inflammation
infiamma, più
to the
si
brain. The more
degenera
the
dal punto di
brain
vista
gets
cognitivo nel tempo.
inflamed, the more it degenerates
l'uso
with time.
dell'alcol
So
che
the use of
infiamma il
alcohol
cervello.
inflammates the brain.
L'uso della marijuana che
Use of
infiamma il
marijuana
cervello.
also inflammates the
L'uso
brain.
di
The use
anche fare degli sport dove
of
uno sbatte la testa e ha dei forti colpi,
the
anche
sports
questo
where
aumenta la
one also
degenerazione
had like
cognitiva.
some strong
Quindi quello che
traumas
succede è
and
che
hits
se
the
vuoi
head,
avere
also increases
uno
inflammation.
stato mentale
So if I
sano
want to have a sane
in
mental
futuro e voglio
state
evitare
in the
certi
future and I
stati di
want to
malattia,
avoid
io
some
devo
states
oggi
of sickness, I
stare
need
attento a quello che faccio.
today to be careful
mai
about
troppo
what I
presto,
do.
non è
It's
mai
never
troppo
too
tardi.
early, never too late.
No? Parlando della plastica, ho sentito
Talking
un'altra
about
cosa che mi ha
plastic, I
colpito.
also heard something else that
È stato-
impressed me, that
Mia madre mi mandò un documentario che non
my
ho visto
mother sent me a documentary that still I haven't
che
watched,
racconta di una
that
dottoressa
talks
in
about
questi Stati Uniti
a doctor in
riceveva
the
dei
United
pazienti
States
dove il loro
receiving
principale
some patients
problema
where
era
their main
l'infertilità.
problems is infertility.
Coppie che volevano avere figli e non
Couples that
riuscivano.
wanted to have children and that didn't
E
manage to
lei,
do so.
facendo i test, hanno
And
visto che in quei
as
casi
she was
il loro
studying them,
principale problema
she
era
saw
che gli
that the
spermatozoi
main
erano molto
cause
lenti.
is that the spermatozoes were very slow,
E
like
cosa ha
very,
fatto?
very
Ha
slow.
dato una dieta senza plastica alla coppia.
And so she gave a diet without
Estrema.
plastic to the
Quindi
couple, like
niente
extreme, like
contatto
no
con
contact
plastica
with
per
plastic
3 mesi.
for 3 months. after 3 months, the majority of them were able to have children. Because one of the main causes, I don't know if the main, but one of the most important causes of infertility is the quantity of microplastic in our body. But 3 months already make a difference. So if we cut the quantity of contact that we have with plastic, the result is tangible.
Nello simile modo a questo,
In a similar way, if I maintain a conduct in my daily life of hatred, of anger, of lamentation, of criticism, of victimizing myself, of being against the world, and because here and there and so on, as I go on, then I'm creating that. So the probability that these aspects manifest in a strong way is much greater. If on the other hand I put some effort, and here we go back to the neuronal ways, it's not easy, but it's possible to change dynamic. Just in the same way that it's difficult to live without the contact with plastic. Okay, I buy vegetable. Do I buy the ones in plastic or without? Those in plastic are already cut and clean, and it's more easy. We need to change what we care about, not what is more convenient, what is good for us, not what is difficult. So I remember that when I was in India, I would go to the market. I liked the vegetables that still were dirty and still have like some. First time that I was here in Italy, vegetable is so clean. People take the gloves, take vegetables. I didn't understand that thing. People, it's not like you eat a vegetable as soon as you take it. If I touch the carrot and you take the carrot, you wash the carrot before cooking it. But this is my own personal problem. Maybe there is like a reason. I don't want to get into this. But aside from this, that is my own matter. Like, okay, for me, when I went to buy the carrot, you take the carrot and then you need to do this. If it's too soft, then it's not fine. It needs to be hard. No, you cannot touch it. But anyway, it's difficult for us to change habit. It's difficult for us to go there and change the habits of things that you can see, like for example the plastic issue and so on. It's difficult, but it works. Our inner conduct, there are some thoughts, some emotions that are harmful today and tomorrow. Hatred, rancor, aggressiveness, violence, envy, jealousy, obsession with self-gratification, not seeing the other. And on the other hand, there are some things that are really good for us, and as we have already said many times, love and compassion and gratitude, joy, the offering, the sharing, loving. These are things that are very important. And so, if I want to avoid hell, I need to avoid the causes. That's it. It's not a matter of summing up. It's a matter that action that I take today of hatred, that moment of anger that I feel, that feeling of hatred that I have, those violent words that I say, where I wish for the suffering of the other, where I use some aggressive words, that action that I take doesn't end there. Sooner or later, I will have to pay the bills. But that bill, I don't want to pay it. I don't want to get there. So, I need to stop creating causes. We are all free to do whatever we want. But no one of us is free from the consequences of our own actions. And so, I don't want certain situations, and I imagine that no one here does. I don't want to be in a situation where there are no basic conditions in order to be well. And unfortunately, they exist. Hells, hungry ghosts, and many aspects in the animal realm. I don't want to be in those situations. So, from today, I need to avoid the causes.
Non è vivere nella
And
paura
it's not
dell'inferno.
living in the fear of hell. There is no need to be fearful.
C'è bisogno di avere paura delle
There is
cause.
need to be afraid of the causes. Because if I haven't created the causes, then I need not to fear the result.
Ho paura di andare in prigione.
I am afraid of going to jail. Have you done something wrong?
Diciamo
Because
che
we
viviamo
say that, okay, we live in a state, in a country where there is the law, duties, rights. At a certain point, one knows that if one does something, then there is that consequence. Why should I be afraid of prison if I haven't done something wrong? But since I did some things that could send me to jail, at that point, yes, there is the fear of jail. But if at a certain point I feel like stealing and it's convenient for me, but I don't want to go in jail, so I don't steal.
in realtà non è la
Actually, it's not fear of prison that we should have. The fear of the actions that bring to jail. That's the problem. The problem is there. So, like, if at a certain point we park where we shouldn't park, or we
facciamo qualcosa che non va.
go over the speed limits, we do something that shouldn't be done, and the policeman comes and gives us a fine. Who's the guilty of the fine? The policeman? Can we blame the policeman? Look at him giving me a fine. How did he dare?
Se il vigile si
No,
guarda, guarda, io non ho fatto niente.
it's like, okay, no, I didn't do anything. It's you. I'm just the consequence of your actions.
Giusto, no? Perciò non dobbiamo aver paura del...
So we shouldn't be afraid of the fine. We should be afraid of what generates the fine, because once I've done that, then the result, sooner or later, we get there. Let's imagine how would it be if when we drive, our cars would be connected with a technological system that actually the technology of today already allows. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist. Imagine that when you get into the car, the system knows who's driving and whether that person has a license and so on. It's connected with the state system, and then the car is connected with a GPS, and so it knows whether you're in the right direction or wrong direction, what is your speed, where you're parking, and so on. As soon as you're parked in the wrong place, then blink, you get a fine. As you go over the speed limit, you get a fine.
Solo che quando arriva la multa,
But when you get the fine, you don't know, because the fine comes a few months after, and you don't remember that you did that thing.
così è il karma.
That's how karma works.
È come una carta di credito
It's like a credit card
dove le
where
fatture arrivano senza descrizione.
bills come with no description
senza
and
una cadenza
without
Quindi io compro oggi,
a
però
certain
magari mi arriva da
specific
pagare
frequency.
fra
Okay, maybe I buy today
50 mesi.
and then I have to pay in
O
like
magari
50
fra una
months, or
settimana.
maybe in a week.
Quindi magari questo mese ho
And then
speso
maybe
niente,
this month I
e a
didn't
un
spend
certo punto mi
anything.
arriva
Then
la
at a
fattura
certain
di
point I get like
15.000 euro.
15,000 euros of bill, but I didn't do anything. Yeah, at a certain point you did.
Cosa, boh?
What? Yeah, I don't know. It's not written.
Poi un altro mese ho
Then
comprato
another
un sacco di
month,
roba
yes, I
e mi
bought
arriva
so
la
many
fattura
things, and I get the
100
bill like 100 euro.
Vero,
Ah,
non è
wow, so
vero che
beautiful.
uno
Ah, see,
devi pagare le
it's
cose.
not true that one has to
Aspetta un po'.
buy, to pay for things. Yeah, wait a little.
Perciò
And
in
so,
realtà è molto
actually,
semplice. È
it's very
quando
simple.
io capisco
When
che
I
qualcosa
understand
fa male,
that something is bad,
se ho un minimo
if
di
I
amore a me
have a
stesso, io la
a
devo
minimum of love towards myself, I
evitare.
should avoid that.
Anche se mi
Even if
conviene,
it's convenient,
anche se ho
even
l'abitudine,
if I have the habit,
anche se ho
even
voglia,
if
se
I
mi
feel
fa
like
male, lo
it,
devo
if
evitare,
it's
però è
harmful,
un
I should
volersi
avoid
bene a
it.
medio-lungo
But it's like wanting, loving oneself to a more medium long term, because there are some things that are harmful in the medium long term that are more convenient in the short term, like stealing.
Può essere conveniente a breve termine?
Can it be convenient in the short term? Yes.
Medio-lungo termine?
Mid long term?
No.
No.
Okay. Mentire a
Lying,
breve termine può essere conveniente?
can it be convenient in the short term?
Non ci vuole di
Look,
affrontare
really, I
quell'argomento
don't
lì.
want to face that subject, the discussion.
A medio
So I lie.
termine crea un sacco
In the
di
medium, long term, it creates so many
Io ho visto
problems.
diverse situazioni dove
I've
uno
seen many
dice una
situations
bugia,
when one
però poi
tells a
dopo per
lie,
sostenere
and
quella
then to
bugia
sustain
deve
that
dire
lie,
un'altra,
needs
che
to
poi deve
say
dire
another
un'altra, che
one,
poi
and
deve
then
creare
another one,
tutta una
and then he
realtà,
needs to
una
create a
quantità di
whole
conflitti
reality
e
with so many
tensione perché non ha avuto
conflicts
il coraggio
and
dall'inizio
tensions,
di
because
dire
he
la
didn't
verità.
have the courage from the beginning to tell the
Oltre
truth.
che tutta la sofferenza interna che va a creare tutto
Other
il
than
resto.
all the
Perciò
internal suffering that is created and
la
so on.
forza qua, e
And
questo viene
so
chiamato il
the
piccolo
strength
scopo,
here, and this is called
è
the
quello nel
smaller
quale noi
scope,
guardiamo oltre questa
is when
vita e
we
vediamo le
look
azioni
further
di
than
questa
this
vita
life,
connesse a quello che avviene dopo.
and we see
E nel quale io dico,
the
io non
actions
voglio avere
of
una
this
colpa
life
di
connected
nascita,
with what comes after. And so
perché
to
veramente
say
non lo
oneself,
voglio.
I don't want to have a bad
E
rebirth.
perciò
Really, I don't
sto
want that.
attento come vivo oggi
And
la
so
vita,
I am
perché
careful
oggi,
of
nel
how I
momento
live the life
presente,
today,
sto creando le
because
cause
today,
per il domani.
in the present moment, I'm creating the causes
Non devo
for
vivere
tomorrow.
nella paura,
So I shouldn't live in the fear.
devo vivere nella
I should
coerenza.
live in the coherence.
Poi qualche stupidata ne abbiamo fatte tutti, eh? E qua rientra il fatto che esistono le pratiche di purificazione.
Then yeah, we have all done stupid things, and here also comes the fact that there are the practices of purification to face the negative karmic forces accumulated in the past, and of this we will talk about in another moment. So we shouldn't live with the fear of hell, but with the coherence of not creating causes that then will bring to those results.
Credo che sia molto chiaro.
I
No?
believe that it's very clear.
Perciò,
And so,
qual è il beneficio
what
di
is
andare
the
e
benefit
vedere dettagliatamente
of
i vari
seeing
tipi degli inferni?
in detail the various types of hells?
Veramente
One, really,
ci apre
it
la
opens
mente per
our
vedere
minds to
della
see
sofferenza
that
che
some suffering that really
esiste purtroppo.
unfortunately exists.
E quando noi riusciamo
And
a
when
vedere
we
la
are able to
sofferenza
see
dell'altro e
the
non
suffering
essere
of the other and not to be
indifferenti
indifferent
alla sofferenza
in
dell'altro,
front of the
questo
suffering of the
apre il
other,
nostro cuore
this
a
opens
una
our
voglia
heart
dell'empatia,
in a place of empathy,
dopo della
and
simpatia,
then
dell'amore, eccetera.
also of love and so on, and sympathy.
C'è un'altra parte
There is another part
dove se io
that
vedo
is
quella sofferenza e mi
that
connetto
if
con
I see
quello
that suffering and I
e
connect
vado e
myself with
riesco a
that,
fare quel collegamento fra le azioni
and
del presente e un
I'm able
possibile
to
futuro, io quelle cose non le
connect
faccio più.
those the actions of the present with those feelings, then I will
Parliamo della
not take
salute.
those actions anymore. When we talk about health,
In realtà, secondo me, non è che farebbe
according to
proprio
me,
male
it's not that it would be
ogni
bad
tanto a noi
sometimes
stare in
for
contatto
us
con le
to be
persone che stanno
in
molto
touch with
male.
people that are feeling very bad,
E però con una consapevolezza che
but
guarda
with an
quella malattia,
awareness
quali
like,
sono le
okay,
cause,
what
questo è
are the
quello che
causes
va.
of that
Ok, io
disease?
voglio arrivare
Okay,
a quello?
this and that.
Assolutamente no. Quindi
Do I
cosa
want to
devo
get to
fare?
that? Absolutely
No,
no.
non devo mangiare quello,
So what should I do? Eat this, eat that, and so on.
A me mi è
To
capitato,
me, it has happened.
ho fatto gli ultimi esami,
I took the last exams.
dottoressa, prima l'ho vista, era qua in giro. Me l'aveva già detto prima,
The doctor already told me
che avevo una
before
certa
that I had a certain
predisposizione
predisposition to diabetes,
di
a sort of
all'insulina.
resistance to
Ultimi
insulin.
esami sono venuti
Last exams,
chiarissimi.
it showed that very
Quindi
clearly.
va bene, oltre
And
al
so,
fatto di non poter mangiare
other than
latticini e un sacco
not
di
being
altre
able to
robe,
eat
allergie, adesso le ho tagliate
milk
tutte,
and
le
derivates,
allergie,
and
eccetera,
I should also remove
Invece
grain
ho
and
una
sugar and so on.
resistenza
And there is a resistance to insulin and so on. Like, well, I don't want to open my
ma è un esempio
my
personale.
medical
Io
record
sto
to
bene,
you. This is a personal
Ho detto un
example.
po'
I'm
una
fine.
bisaccia,
I
ma
have
sto
like
bene.
some pain
Quello
in
che
my belly,
succede
but
che
I'm
cos'è?
fine.
Ok, io voglio avere il diabete?
So what happens is, do I want to have diabetes?
quindi la
No.
pasta la
And
mangio?
so,
No.
do I eat pasta? No.
Meno, adatto.
Less.
Lo zucchero lo mangio?
I
No.
adapt. Do I eat sugar? No.
Mangio quello, io ho la mia marmellata che
I
mangio
have
tutti i giorni,
my
non la mangio più.
my fruit jam that I would eat every day. Now I can't eat it
Perché?
anymore. Why?
Perché io non
Because
voglio
I don't
avere
want
quel
to
risultato
have
lì.
that result. And is it for sure that I will have it? No, absolutely no. I don't have like a condemnation. Then otherwise I would just eat whatever I want and I will because I will have diabetes anyway. It's not like that. But I see that if I do this and that, there is a high probability that I will have that result. Then I don't want that. So I am careful today. It's an awareness where the present creates the future and we cure the present to take care of the future. And when we talk about death, after death, the next cycles that open to us, Buddha Shakyamuni describes 6 possibilities. We can be reborn as human beings, as animals, hungry ghosts, hell beings, in the semi-god realms and god realms.
Fra queste possibilità, partiamo dalla peggio. Voglio andare
Okay,
all'inferno.
starting from the worst of these possibilities, do I want to go to hell? Absolutely no. What are the actions that bring to be reborn in hell? The actions taken with hatred, with strong violence, the action of killing, of stealing, the action done with an attitude of harming the others and actually harming the others are mainly this. And so I don't want that and I avoid the causes to not get there.
Se noi abbiamo la nostra vita
If we have a coherent life, should we be afraid of hell? No.
vogliamo evitarlo, sì.
Do we want to avoid it? Yes.
Lo evito a tutti gli effetti. Quindi non ho bisogno di
But I am avoiding that by all means, so I don't need to live in fear.
vivere nella
I
consapevolezza
need to live in the awareness
che certe cause
that some causes bring certain results, and by avoiding certain actions, I avoid certain results. No one will be able to make us experience something for which we ourselves didn't create the causes. And so, when as Buddha Shakyamuni was saying, I am my own protector, I am my own enemy. Let's take the responsibility in our hands. When one is able to take the responsibility of oneself in the short, medium and long term, and so longer than this life, in order than thinking about today, also thinking about the tomorrow of the next life, this is when one reaches this level that is called the smaller scope, the first level in the spiritual path, in the gradual path to enlightenment. The first level is when what I do today, it's not just about the today, but also about the tomorrow and the next life, which is already a lot.
Facciamo adesso le nostre dediche.
Now let's make our dedications and we stop for lunch.
Dopo pranzo
Then after lunch we will go back there and we go and see the medium scope.
la parte successiva.
That's
Magari
in the next part. Maybe, I don't know if we will see also the relativity of time. It's nice but not necessary.
Alame kutse rapten chi namkar tinle chokchur gepa dang losan tempe drume sasumgi drove munsel tatu ne gyur che kewa kuntu yanda lama dang drame cheki pela longche chi sadan lamgi yente rabzo ne dorje changi kopa nyurtob Sho nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan dele kshi Ninsen takto dele pe kuncho sumki chingelo Kuncho sumki ngodrubutsol Kuncho sumki trashisho All'alba
Dawn or dusk, night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and to sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
Adesso
Now, I will not receive anyone in this moment. When we finish the next session, we will have a short meeting with everyone. Maybe once.